Hello and welcome everybody to another episode of Pod Strickland. This is a live stream. This is episode 311. I'm your host, Shwin and I am joined by my co-host, who you may have forgotten while he was traveling, jet setting around Italy. His name is Stacy Patton. That is at Stacy Patton 89 on Twitter. Stacy, how are you? How are your travels?
Buongiorno, in the words of Brad Pitt. That is the correct pronunciation. Pretty good. Pretty good to visit the land of Danilo Gallinari and I believe newly acquired Nick Donte DiVincenzo. So,
Oh, look at
maybe
that.
that's what portended it.
It's definitely possible.
It was all me, guys. That's the point I'm making.
It's always been Toretto O'Brien. Before we get started, I have to make a few announcements. The first being that the Strickland has an Instagram. Check that out. That is at the Strick.land on IG, posting all kinds of new content on there. The Strickland also has a YouTube channel where if you're watching this, that's great. Please hit like and then subscribe to the channel. That would be a huge help to us. The Strickland also has merchandise on our website, so check that out. You can find it all on there. T-shirts, sweatshirts, hats, water bottles, coffee mugs, you name it, we got it. And then the Strickland has a Patreon. You can subscribe to it, a number of different tiers. $6 tier that gets you access to this pod right here that I do with Prize every Friday. You also get access to the Strickland mailbag hosted by Drew, a.k.a. Doug, the Doug Bag. That comes out every other week alongside Dallas Miko. You also get access to the Strickland Discord. There's a $9 tier that gets you access to Strickland Roll, Solo Pod, where I rant and rave about the Knicks even more. You also get access to wonderful premium articles by Matthew Miranda, one of the best in the business. There are further tiers, $15 tier, $30 tier, $50 tier, and $100 tier. Those come with a variety of additional benefits like listening in on pod recordings, merchandise discounts, and even potentially co-hosting a podcast alongside yours truly one day, whether you choose to subscribe or not. None of this would be possible without you. And then finally, this show, this podcast would not be possible without Bet Online, which is your number one source for all your betting needs. Get the latest odds, lines, and matchup reports for baseball, boxing, golf, and more. Bet Online continues to be the fastest and easiest way to place your wagers, including live betting and your favorite casino and card games available to play right from your phone. Head to the website or use your mobile device to sign up today and get in on the action. Remember to use promo code BLEAV, BLEAV, for your 50% welcome bonus on your first deposit. Bet Online, where the game starts. Just a heads up to those in the comments. We are going to try to get to those at the end of the pod, but for right now, we're just going to have a little chat because I haven't chatted with Stacy about the New York Knickerbockers in a long time. I actually I have no idea what your thoughts are about the things they have not done for the most part in the last month, and a couple of things they did yesterday. We'll start with what is the most relevant, which is the Knicks sign Donte DiVincenzo, 4 years, $50 million, just below the full mid-level exception, fully guaranteed. Apparently, I think so. At least the way that Fred Katz put it in his article was that there were no options in the contract. So that still leaves open the possibility there's a non-guaranteed year, whatever the hell it is. So, but I believe there's no options in it. And also, the Knicks traded Obi Toppin yesterday to Indiana for 2 second-round picks. We don't know yet. I don't believe which second-rounders those are. Indiana has a bunch, so I would personally imagine that they're ones further out in the future. But we will see whenever that trade goes official, which should be on July 6th. I'm just gonna let you cook here. Stacy, what were your thoughts on? Let's start with the Obi one because I feel like that's a little bit more. I don't know. They're both kind of interesting moves, but I guess what were your thoughts on the Obi Toppin trade, and ultimately, what are your thoughts on his tenure in New York and kind of how the Knicks, let's be quite honest, mismanaged it?
Yeah. So with the trade, it's not particularly surprising. This was in the works for a while. I imagine if they could have gotten a first for him at the trade deadline, I imagine they would have made the deal.
At the trade deadline?
Yeah, this year I think so.
I,
They got Hart.
No, I'll let you go, but I don't know if I agree. But go ahead.
My take is that, well, I guess the reason this is an asset focused front office. So if you were going to keep Obi for post the trade deadline, it would be because you're making a playoff run. He's an important piece. But Tibbs closed games with Hart before. He's shown a proclivity for that. He's closed games where Obi was playing well without him in the playoffs. I don't think Tibbs was super attached to him. So if they said, hey, we're going to trade one of your rotation players, despite the fact we're in a playoff push because this is the most value we could recoup, I think he would have gone along with it. So I imagine that, the writing's been on for the wall for a while, and they couldn't get a first for him this year. Maybe at the end of last year they could have, but keeping him may have been a way to hedge the bets on, maybe Randall will not come back, right? So, in terms of asset management, it was less than ideal, but you can understand what's happened there. In terms of as a player, like, I'm gonna miss the dude. I said this on Twitter, like, the loudest I've ever heard Madison Square Garden was after it was a sequence in Game 2 of the Hawks series, the only playoff game the Knicks won that year. Only in the first in recent memory, the Knicks went up 6 on a possession where Obi switched on to Kevin Huerter, moved his feet with him, got a block, then ran the floor in his like Forrest Gump running the floor away and caught an alley-oop, and the floor was shaking. Like, that is the loudest I've ever heard of Madison Square Garden. And I was there game 3 this year against the Cavs. So
nice flex, dude.
The point is that was pretty nuts, and it was that's who he is, right? He brings energy. He gives a lot of effort on both ends. He's a very smart player. But there's a reason why even on draft night, I don't think most of us, that was not the pick we wanted. A lot of fans wanted Tyrese Halliburton. I think most of us in the Strickland, a lot of us wanted Devin Vassell. I liked Kira Lewis. Clearly, I was wrong on that. Obi had a much better career so far than Kira Lewis, but I liked Vassell too. Maxey, Halliburton, and his teammate Emmanuel Quickley are guys that went below him, and of course Bane, that have had better careers. And part of the reasoning around that was this is a guy who's kind of a 4 or 5 tweener. He's ideally probably a 5 on offense as a roll man, a short roll guy, used a little bit like maybe the way Draymond is used on the Warriors with his passing ability, and can handle the ball a little bit, even if he's not super shifty, can knock down the occasional 3. But as a stretch 4, it's a little weird fit on offense. But on defense, he's not ideally a 5 because he can't really play drop coverage. So it became a little bit of, and he's probably not agile enough or laterally agile enough to play the 3. But you take all of that away, and what I think he's shown is that he's a 20 to 25 minute guy, whether he's a starter or bench guy, who can energize your team, who knows his limitations. And because of how smart he is, I don't think he's ever like sunk the Knicks on defense. He's had some he's had some lineups where maybe and matchups where maybe he can get exploited, but I don't think he's ever been this kind of anchor on defense. Well, that's the wrong word, but he's never been like this kind of albatross on defense, right?
Mm-hmm. Yeah, like maybe at the start of his rookie season, and obviously like there are individual game stretches where he is not good on defense, but like that's like saying Brunson's an albatross on defense.
Yeah, Brunson is more of one. That's my point, right? Like Obi,
you can get away with it a little bit more though with the guard, don't you think?
You can. That's the consideration, that at that position, that is why we harp on Randall's defense so much, right? I have seen people say, why are you so concerned with Randall's defense? Like, Brunson's pretty ass on defense too. It's like, well, when Randall drops 41 in an elimination game, I will give him a break on defense. And 2, but to the more salient point, it matters more for bigs, and that is kind of the reality of the situation with Obi. But in terms of the mismanagement, I think that as much as like I think Tibbs could have done a lot more, I think Obi should have been given more of a chance last year when Randall was going through whatever Randall was going through. And there's just been times where it feels like Tibbs has had it in for Obi. As much as that's true, there is a bit of a ceiling in terms of how integral a player like that can be when they're not a plus, or I would say on the whole, he's like a slightly below average defender who can be exploited in certain matchups. And
on the whole, preparation H does feel good.
Exactly. So on that sense, like, I don't think it's like if they traded IQ, I would get it. And we can talk about that and talk about DiVincenzo. If they traded IQ, I would have a feeling like they might have punted on a real high upside guy. I think they have punted on Obi having a more upside than he showed here, and maybe being something like a Montrezl Harrell type impact guy, like a really good 6-man big off the bench and give you 20 to 25 minutes, juice your offense, maybe swing some games in the playoffs. But did they punt on a potential like high level starter? No. And given that, I think 2 second-round picks is good. And we can revisit the draft as well. Look, they didn't know that this was going to happen with Randall. I would assume that most parties were willing to move on. It didn't. And then, we've both been very critical of Randall. If you want to move on from Randall, I get it. I think the idea that Obi was going to be that replacement is a little bit tough. If they got rid of Randall, I would have wanted them to bring in another 4. Maybe it was someone who would split time with Obi, but I would have wanted them to bring in more of a defensive 4 anyway.
Yeah, maybe like a big wing, like somebody like 6'8", 7'1", like Paul George upside.
So Cam Reddish,
Yeah.
No, exactly. But they, I actually thought you were making a pitch for one of the McDaniels brothers, but
no. I mean, look, the Jalen McDaniels thing, I think he would have been. He's like a fun. I don't want to say a punt, but like, it's a bet, right? Like, you don't really know how good he is or isn't. I think he's at least like a bench guy. Like, he's an NBA player, right? He's not a guy that like should not be in the NBA
with intriguing tools, right?
Right. Like, he has intriguing tools. Does he shoot well enough to justify being a starting 4? Probably not. Bench 4, bench 3, 4, whatever. I think that's a fine role for him. How impactful is that? I don't know. And we can talk about that later when we talk about DiVincenzo, which I really like that signing, to be honest.
Yeah, me too.
But to go back to the Obi thing,
I'll just close with this too. Like, also the trade happened. I hope everyone realizes this. People are like, well, Leon Rose's son is his agent, right? Well, that's probably why they traded him too, right? I'm sure Obi wanted out, and he's in a pretty ideal situation. And I wonder if there might have been a situation that got him a better second-round pick or something, but they sent him to a place where he's probably going to thrive, close to where he went to college, because they have that relationship. And the fact that they drafted his brother also tells me that, whatever mismanagement happened, I imagine the relationship is still fine between the parties. So, it's a business thing.
Yeah, so I will say this about Obi. I'm not I think in like 90% of situations around the league, he's not a high-end starter. But a team with a stretch 5 may be able to use him and unlock him and maximize what he can give you as a role man, as a short role creator, passer, whatever, that the Knicks with their centers never were going to be able to. And so, like, honestly, I think if I were Boston, I may have kicked the tires if the price was 2 second-round picks. I don't know if they have second-round picks from other teams or if they have all their seconds in the future. They should. I mean, they should have seconds because they made all those trades on draft night to accumulate future seconds. I would have maybe kicked the tires on that as a low-cost acquisition after getting Porzingis, just because I think that's an intriguing fit. But
do you think the Knicks would have been opposed to trading him within the division, I guess is the question.
I don't think so. I mean, they traded him to within the conference, and I know that, like, Indiana was well outside the playoff picture last year, but they also are a young team. They
were competitive until they benched Haliburton. So
yeah, I mean, as much as I like to clown Tyrese Haliburton, who, by the way, that contract, like, I just want everybody to know this. If you see me or hear me championing Tyrese Haliburton for All NBA next year, understand it's about the long con. Okay, but. To go back to Obi, like, I don't think they would have been opposed to it because I just think at least how they've operated, it seems like they're willing to trade based on value, not too concerned with, like, can't trade him in the division, right? I mean, they tried to get OG Anunoby, right? They traded. I know it wasn't a huge trade, but they did trade Austin Rivers to Philly. Like, they've made trades in division, or at least tried to make trades in division. So I don't think they're opposed to that. And like, they've traded with Detroit. Again, not that Detroit is competition, but there's a lot of like you see this in the NBA all the time, right? It's like, they don't want to trade him in the conference, right? You don't want to see that guy fucking 3-4 times a year. So, like, I don't think they're opposed to that stuff. But to bring it back to Obi specifically, I'll say this, like, the trade, that trade was you were never going to get some awesome return. So, like, if you were expecting more than what they got, you're basically talking about, like, maybe they would have gotten an extra second or a protected first from a team that's really good and wants to take a punt on a guy they think maybe is misused. Like say Boston, right? Maybe Boston would have been like, yeah, we'll give you our protected first next year for Obi. And like on the surface, you'd be like, that's way better value. But is it like if Boston is almost locked into probably being a what one of the 5 best teams in basketball next season? Like, is that really that great of a pick? And I mean, you would probably know this better than me. So just a quick question, but like to my knowledge, the 2024 draft is one that teams are apparently not super high on. Is that somewhat accurate to say?
That's fair.
So like if they get future seconds, that might just be a better asset return. I'm not really gassing up the asset return. I'm just saying like future seconds in this scenario might be better than an immediate protected first that you would receive. Now, the part of it that I think I wanted to get back to, you mentioned the trade deadline. Would they have gotten better value if they traded Obi at the trade deadline? Almost certainly, indubitably, one might say. But like you have to put yourself in their position and you have to think how they think, right? At the trade deadline, this was a team, I don't remember their exact record, but basically since they had made the rotation changes, this was a good team. I think they were on like a 50-win pace at that point. Like it was not some fluky, they're just like they were a good team. Their metrics were good. And I'm not saying Obi was some critical component to that, but he was in the rotation. He was playing minutes. Like he was getting minutes every night. He's not, I think, what is it, 15, 16 minutes a night, whatever the hell it was. It's not a huge role, but it is a steady role, right? And I think if they had just traded him for a pick, that would go against everything we know about them, right? We know that they want to win basketball games. We know they want to be competitive. If you just trade him for a pick, that's basically hurting your rotation. Even if it's minor, that's a hit you take. And if you honestly look at the playoffs, Obi was key in a couple of their victories, especially in the first round specifically against Cleveland, right? He was really good in game 4 to the point that they didn't close with Randall. They closed with Obi. And he was really good in game 5 when Randall got hurt. I mean, I thought his stretch at the start of the second half really kind of helped us keep them at bay at a time where it felt like they might make a serious run. So he was good in 2 key moments in the playoffs. And I think there is a value to that is intrinsic. It's not, I can't put a number on that. I can't pop that in a spreadsheet and tell you what it's worth. It's not going to show up. And when I go to Real GM Future Drafts Detailed, you don't get to see Obi Toppin played really well in 2 playoff games that were big for the Knicks. Like there's a value to keeping him that is hard to measure.
Even if you keep Randall.
Yeah, even if you keep Randall, because, well, no, I'm talking about the decision not to trade him at the deadline last year. Just that specifically. Like, I think for their purposes and probably what were you going to get? You're talking about probably a late first in this upcoming draft. Maybe that's probably the best thing you could hope for, right? Is that really, like, what's the value? What's the, value proposition there? What's the trade-off you're making? It's hard to really nail that down. And I think that just needs to be considered when you're talking about it, because given everything we know about how they want to operate, they value the product on the floor in terms of every single season. Their focus is, how do we win the most games we can win with this current roster? Are there ways to move it forward in the season? They've made 3 in-season trades. They've made 4 technically if you want to count the Austin Rivers thing, but they've made 3 actual in-season trades each year, right? They traded for Derrick Rose the first year. They traded for Cam Reddish the second year. And then they traded for Josh Hart this past year. And all those moves, at least 2 of those moves, were 100% geared towards, let's try to improve the basketball team, our personnel, our ability to win basketball games on the court this season. The Cam Reddish one is a little bit weird, and that's probably why it didn't work, because it's almost counter to so much of how they've operated. So when you introduce that, it probably leads to what happened, where, look, let's be honest, the Cam Reddish thing was, I don't want to say a disaster, because disaster.
No, it was an L. It was an L. Just like the Obi thing is an L. Right?
They fucked up. But like, yeah, I think the OB situation is what it is. They mismanaged that in terms of, and this is where it's tough, is like, realistically, you probably should have traded him earlier. But if you look at like the timelines, right? So first year Randall comes back, he's all NBA. Obi's rookie. And if people forget, like he closed that year well. He was probably one of the only guys that played well in the fucking playoffs that year. So like, and you just said, he loudest you've heard of the Garden. So like he closes that year well. And what team is honestly going to punt on an 8th overall pick after one season? It's just not a realistic ask. Okay. Next year, Randall has a disastrous season. Obi closes the season really, really well. Do you want to trade Obi at that point to maximize his asset value just because you have reservations about Randall? When you have reservations about Randall. I know they didn't trade Randall, obviously, but it's hard to believe that they wouldn't have looked at the season Randall had and been like, look, even if you want to bring him back, let's keep Obi around because we might need to make a pivot here sooner rather than later. We know this kid. We like his talent. We picked him 8th overall for a reason. Let's keep him around because we don't know. We don't know what's going to happen with Randall. Randall comes back. He's awesome last season, right? And like I said, I think trade deadline is probably the optimal time to trade him as an asset. But there are other considerations besides maximizing his asset.
And you're saying that. So I think I don't think we disagree. I agree he was key, or he was an important part.
He was a part of the rotation anyway. I'm not going to say key. But yeah,
I'm just wondering if I do think this front office prioritizes asset management, and I think the fact that they traded Obi now, unless they are going for a guy like Shwin and Watford or something, it gives me belief that I think they are cool with one of Hart or RJ playing the 4 as the backup minutes. So if that's the case now, I don't see why that would have been that much different at the trade deadline
because they didn't get DiVincenzo. Like they didn't I know they like Deuce, right? But let's be fucking honest. Like Deuce,
you can also just play IQ more minutes.
Yeah, but that's an 8-man rotation, and think about there were points in the season where we were 7 guys.
Yeah,
you're thin. Like I think you needed that guy. And if
so you think that if they wanted to trade, but
I think if Deuce shot better, they might have pulled the trigger because they would have been more comfortable being like, whatever, we're a little small, but fuck it, like let's do it. I think they would have been more comfortable with that. But I think
you think they would have gotten a first at the trade deadline though? Like, do you think? Well, you went through that part of it as well. So, but the return you think would have been the same anyway, right?
Yeah, I think they could have gotten like that Celtics first from Indiana, or whatever it was, the 29th pick overall. And like, look, I'm not. We can talk about the draft. I know that we haven't talked since then, but like, I would have preferred they moved into I get why they didn't. I think there are cap reasons and whatever. But like, I wish they had a pick in that draft. So I would have been comfortable with that trade. I would have been okay with it in terms of a value. Like, I think that's fine value. But the way they managed it, it is what it is. Like at the end of the day, you can't deny that you take a guy 8th overall, he gets traded 3 years later for 2 seconds. Like it's not great. It's just not great. I mean, that is what it is. So they deserve criticism for that. And I think Tibbs deserves some criticism for it too, because in that second season when Randall was fucking awful and destructive, to be quite honest, he still never gave Obi a legitimate shot. He never gave him.
He cited net rating as the reason he wouldn't play Randall and Obi together. But today, Ian Begley said that Tibbs liked that Hartenstein-Sims lineup when Obi was out.
Is that what he said?
It was posted on the Discord, but Begley had a report, and in the report he said, they might go with Hart or RJ Barrett as the backup 4. Tibbs also liked the Hartenstein-Sims lineups, which had a -4 net rating and was bad last year. Granted, Hartenstein was injured during that time, or it was not the Hartenstein that we saw at the end of the season. But yeah, like if you're going to try that, why would you have never tried Obi and Randall together, for like an extended period of time?
Yeah. So like, I just think, and it's not just that, right? Like there were points where it's like, just not trying anything with Obi. Like, let's fucking throw him at the 3 for a little bit. Let's just see it. Like, it's okay to just try shit. If it doesn't work, it doesn't work. I mean, Kemba Walker didn't work, and we tried that for way too long. Alec Burks at point guard was not the greatest thing. We tried that for a long time. Like, we tried things that didn't work, so why not try something else? That might not work, but maybe it does. Who knows? I just think there was a lack of give with Tibbs. And let's call like it what it is. This isn't even necessarily criticism, because I think like the idea to me that Tibbs doesn't like young guys is kind of it's not the correct framing. If you want to say that in key moments he'll err on the side of vets over young players, I think that's accurate and I think that's fair. But he trusts Grimes. He trusts Quickly. He trusts RJ, even though RJ, like I think the RJ thing is weird because he was a number 3 overall pick. I think there's a different equation there, but I do think he likes RJ. I think he trusts RJ. He fucking loves Mitch. He basically just every time he talks about him, he's like verbally filleting him. It's fucking his importance to like our defense and the rebounding. I think he's called him the best offensive rebounder in the league multiple times.
Well, that's not hyperbole.
No, it's not hyperbole. I mean, Adams when he's healthy is probably a little bit better, but he's up there, right? And it's not, I'm not saying it's hyperbolic. I'm just saying he clearly values those guys and likes those guys. And even if we want to, and we have obviously more than quibbled with some of his usage of these players and how he treats them and gives them minutes, he has consistently given those guys burn, especially Grimes now this past season, and played them a lot. His eval of Obi Toppin was that he was not good enough. That's it. It's as simple as that. He clearly did not believe that Obi Toppin at the 4 was good enough for what he wanted to do offensively, defensively, whatever. You can disagree with that. You can agree with it. That and like again, I'm not really criticizing Tibbs. I'm just saying that's what it is. And in some ways, if you're the front office, you've got to seriously, I think you should really go back. Think about the discussions. They must have had plenty of discussions before that draft, before whatever. And think about like it's, I don't know if Tibbs was on board with that pick. I mean, the reporting was he was, but look at how he used him for 3 years. I find it hard to believe that he was super gung-ho about that pick, especially, I think me and you both wanted them to take Vassell at the time. Actually, I think you wanted Kyra, right? More than Vassell?
I was pretty split with like head saying Vassell, heart saying Kira. But
yeah, the tween Hezzy had you.
I also didn't know we were going to get Quickly, so that would have changed my calculation.
But like, yeah, I mean, I think if you go back in time, put a gun to Tibbs' head, who do you want? I think he would have said Vassell, because that just seems like a guy that is very easy for Tibbs to.
Is it? I think so. He likes wings. Like he doesn't use. I mean, he liked Luol Deng a lot, but like he didn't give Cam that much of a shot. Like,
but Cam wasn't actually good on defense. Vassell was at least, I don't know how he's been in the NBA.
He's not been good in the NBA, but he was. I mean, he was like that was his big thing. It's weird how he's turned out as like an aside. Yeah. Out of college, he was a guy who could shoot with like some like self creation, like pull up potential, but he was mostly like a preternatural processor and like with length and everything. And we just, I mean, yeah, I know Prez was really high on him too. Like we thought he was just going to be this super impactful defense guy who could knock down threes, kind of like in the way that I don't want to say Michael Bridges, but like that kind of player. And what he's been is like a guy who's developed some real shot creation ability with the handle that he's continued to improve and the fact that he has that high release. But the defense has been, it's interesting though, because I think when you're on losing teams, sometimes defense, like Anthony Davis was thought to be a generational defensive prospect. It took him a few years until New Orleans started being competitive for him to really figure that out.
Even a guy like, I mean, San Antonio is just weird because
now I think he will be good on defense.
Yeah, they have a couple of, like Keldon Johnson's another guy where you're like, he should be good on defense, but he's not been good at all on defense through his career. So like, it's a weird thing, and it's, like you said, sometimes
maybe they have a shitty coach.
Yeah, that's probably what it is. And sometimes it's just like you said, like if you're on a bad team, sometimes your defense will lag because that's how it is. And also, like, there's a difference between can you be a cog in a defensive system versus can you actually move the needle on defense. There aren't a lot of guys that actually move the needle on defense positively.
At least that aren't bigs, right?
Yeah. So I mean, anyway, but yeah, like the OB thing is just, I think in some ways, this, look, there's no way, again, to talk about this in any way other than this is probably, I mean, this is up there with one of their worst.
Yeah, it's on the level with the Reddish move.
The
on
Fournier
the level
contract.
probably with signing Fournier.
Yeah.
I don't like people like the Nerlens Noel contract was like to a much lesser degree like a loss.
Yeah, I don't like the 2021 offseason thing, especially like the Fournier contract aside. The other ones to me, I'm just like.
I mean, Burks I think was a legitimately good.
Yeah,
sign.
Burks was
like,
good.
Tibbs misused them, whatever, but that was like he was a good
Burks
player.
Was good, and at the end of the day, like they signed a lot of those contracts because yeah, they were trying to be good, but they also signed them with the express knowledge that if need be, they could move off of those contracts. So, like, yeah, you can if you want to put that up as some failure, that's fine. It wasn't exactly like did it set back how like did it are we sitting here like, oh my god, that set back the organization? No, it's not one like it's not like we signed up like 5 Joakim Noah contracts. Okay. Like those are contracts that set back your fucking franchise. These contracts not set back the franchise. They hurt a little bit, they were painful a little bit. They didn't move the needle very much at all, if at all, not positively anyway, but they didn't kill us. And so, like, I'm not going to put that in anywhere close to the same thing. And quite honestly, like, and this is where I fall on the Obi thing. Again, they deserve criticism for all kinds of things related to Obi Toppin. Them, Tibbs, all of them do. But like, when you're judging a front office, to me, you have to judge on aggregate what they do. Like, for example, the best gamblers in the world, they don't win 80% of their bets. They don't win 90% of their bets. They don't win 70% of bets. If you win 60% of your bets, you are like a fucking great gambler. 56% is the number you generally need to be to make that a very
and most importantly, that those 44% can't be catastrophic.
Right.
And some of the 56%, like the expected value of those has to be higher, right? So none of the moves they've made have really been catastrophic.
Yeah,
the closest they've come to that is how bad the Julius contract started to look last year, but now it looks like they've weathered that storm. We'll see what happens with extension, but
best contract in the league, baby.
No, his teammate has it.
I know.
I'm talking about Isaiah Roby, of course. It's I think it's a good way to look at it. It's like it's hard to there's a lot of uncertainty. You're going to take L's, so it's fine they've taken L's, but I think they do a good job of capping their downside. Like whatever you want to say, like if you want to say Obi, first of all, Obi wasn't a complete waste. Like he's played a key role to the points you made in some wins and into turning this around. That matters.
Yeah, he deserves. And like, honest, I know it's ridiculous to be like Obi Toppin changed the culture, but no, but he was part of a group of Knicks teams. Forget changing the culture, right? But like, turn this. Let's be quite honest, and this is where I give Tibbs credit too, and obviously the front office and everybody really is like, this franchise was a fucking joke 3 years ago, like a joke. The perception of the Knicks was they are a joke, they are unserious. And even though, like, yeah, they're gonna have a bunch of cap space and they have picks and there are some intriguing young players, nobody was looking at this team or this franchise and being like, man, what a fucking great opportunity, what a great job. And
it was a blank slate with
right.
the Marcus Morris pick and RJ Barrett
and the Dallas picks and whatever,
Mitch, right?
Yeah.
But it was more of a blank. Like in the past, the Knicks were in a situation where they don't have picks and they have all these bad contracts. Like they weren't starting from underwater, right? They were starting by treading water. So it was a better situation than maybe some previous front offices inherited. But they still weren't. There still was a lot to be done, right? It's things that no other front office has done in a long time for the Knicks.
Yeah, and so like Obi was a part of those teams. He deserves credit for it. I think that is just a fact. Obviously he's not the most important guy in that thing in turning it around, but he deserves credit for it. He's part of it. And he gave us some fun moments on the court. And like I know that sounds really cheesy, but we are basketball fans. We are supposed to want to enjoy the product we're seeing. And I think, whatever my misgivings about Obi at times, like he did give us fun moments. And look, I've really wanted to avoid killing Tibbs for this because I think what you said earlier about like there's kind of a limit, especially if you have fives that are not spacing fives, about what you can get and do with Obi. But like I don't remember the exact numbers, but somebody in our Discord posted this yesterday. Obi Toppin his rookie season was used as a roll man, something like on 32 possessions or 32 times per 100 possessions.
I think it was Dallas who posted this, but yeah.
Yeah. Second year, it was like 21.8. And then last year it was 8.8. Like to me, if my criticism of Tibbs in terms of how he utilized Obi is very specifically this. I don't think there was any effort, and actually a reduced effort as time went on, to try to maximize what Obi could give him. Whether you agree or disagree with that, that's simply a fact, a statistical fact. There was less attempts made to let's use the athletic roll man guy who was getting Amari Stoudemire comps coming out of college. There was less attempts to use him in that capacity and more attempts into turning him into like Rashard Lewis, just be like, yeah, spot up on the perimeter and shoot threes. Like that was the most frustrating part of watching him this year, where it was just like everything was just a spot up three, a fucking off a kick out. And he made some strides as a shooter for sure. I mean, he hit that step back against, what was it, Indiana, funny enough, which was awesome. But like, that's not his game. That's not what you want him to do. And there was just such a little attempt, I think, on Tibbs's part to move and to really give him an opportunity. And like, I get that choice, but I don't totally agree with it. And I think the part that really frustrates me about it is it's not so much like, is Obi Toppin going to be awesome somewhere else? Like, whether he is or isn't, let's say he's not. It's not really what matters. I think what the Obi Toppin situation kind of really highlights is Tibbs is Tibbs. He is true to his core. He does not like deviating from that. And I think his rigidity and lack of creativity offensively, and unwillingness to experiment with different lineups, at least, especially at the big man spots, I think that really hurt Obi. He saw Obi as a 4 and just a 4. That's it. Nothing else. And his 4, other than Julius, they had to be able to knock down shots. And so we really never saw much of an attempt of getting Obi switches in the post that you could feed, right? There was not, and it was actually weird because I thought we started seeing that more at the end of last season, and then this year we didn't do it at all.
Well, I mean, he's because he's kind of a top heavy guy. That's probably never going to be a big part of his game.
It is. It isn't. But it's like
it's things that you can do besides have him spot up. And I think the things that really worked for him, especially as a rookie and last year, like what really was more frustrating was the lack of DHOs, especially when he played with Hartenstein, who the shooting ended up not being real. But this is a guy who can operate farther away from the rim, who moves well without the ball, who can make some decisions. So I actually, that was one thing that I thought would be a lot better, was that pairing, Obi and Hartenstein, in terms of these things, using Obi not just in role, but like as a DHO guy. He likes to fake the handoff and drive. We've seen him, when he has a mismatch on the perimeter on a slower guy, and part of it, maybe they didn't have a great, if they had a guy like Jaren Jackson Jr., right, or a guy that you could play next to him, or KP, I think that was part of the reason you mentioned Boston, is a guy who can protect the rim but also space the floor, and move without the ball and not be Mitch. It would have been intriguing to see him try those things. And I think on other teams, they would have gotten him to do it anyway. But I think that the more disappointing thing is like his ability to read and make quick decisions was just never capitalized on. And this is a team that, for all its talent, lacks some guys like that. And I think in Indiana, look, say what you want about Halliburton. Maybe his contract is the most money that's been given to a Halliburton since Iraq. But it's it's going to be fun. I mean, they are a really good pairing in terms of the amount of passing surrounded by all the shooters they have. I think Turner can space the floor a little bit, so they'll probably use Obi more in the roll game. But yeah, like it seemed like Tibbs just made very little effort to kind of play to Obi's strengths. And we talked about this with Hartenstein, right? Like they used Hartenstein like they would have used Nerlens Noel or Taj Gibson or Mitch, right, for most of the season, and he struggled to adapt. And then when he got healthy, he started doing those things, and then Tibbs let him do like some of the more fun stuff for him. And Obi just never got to that point. So, or in Tibbs' eyes at least. So,
yeah, it just is what it is. It's not really like at this point, it's just, it is what it is. Like, I don't really know what to say because I've kind of been resigned to this is what was going to happen in. I
was hoping they'd get more back. I thought they could.
Yeah, I was hoping they'd get more back, but honestly, like we're talking about an extra second round pick or two or something like that. Like I get.
I was hoping they could trade into this draft, and I get like if it's cap considerations and all that.
And I think they
fine,
tried. I mean, Begley reported they tried to get back into the late first. I would assume that was specifically with Indiana, who eventually traded for him anyway and had initially anyway the 26th and the 29th pick. And I think they had the 32nd or 33rd pick. They had three kind of picks in that same region. So I assume that's who they were targeting. But like Indiana might have just been like, we'll just trade for him later. We want to use these assets in a different way. So, it's up to the Knicks then. Like, hey, we'll give you this late first, but you got to attach a second to Obi, like in the deal. I don't know. Is that actually a better deal then? Yeah. I don't know. It's hard to say, but
my guess is Brock Aller would say no. So
yeah, I would guess that Brock Aller would say no. Fuck you. Fuck you. Pay me. But like, all right. Anyway, moving on from Obi, and I want to say it's like Obi's all. I love Obi. He was a fun player. I wish him nothing but the best. Hopefully he has a very, very productive and healthy career in Indiana and elsewhere, where if he does move on from there eventually in time, makes a lot of money and leads the Pacers to no victories at all, because fuck the Pacers forever. But yeah, really good dude. I'm happy that he's going to a situation that I think they play a way that should, like you mentioned, like if he's going to thrive and succeed in the NBA, that's probably the situation that makes the most sense,
Barring playing under Pop and being turned into Boris Diaw with Pops, that would have been pretty awesome too. But I think that Indy is a pretty good situation and good coach. So
yeah, I totally agree. All right, let's move on to DiVincenzo. So DiVincenzo signs with the Knicks. 4 years, $50 million. I think the first cap hit let me look at this. Spotrac has his cap hit for the first year at 11.6, 11.627 million, just under 11.628 million, if you want to call it that. I'm excited about this signing. I think he's a good player. I think he's about worth this contract. I think he has a chance to actually blow this contract out of the water. I'm kind of bullish on him as like a guy you're buying that has some sneaky upside, given some of the injury stuff he's gone through over the last 2 years. I thought he looked a lot better towards the end of the season in Golden State. I know his playoffs weren't great, but again, not a huge sample. And quite honestly, they played two really good teams in the Sacramento Kings and the Los Angeles Lakers. So tough shit sometimes. But I like him as a player. I think strong rebounding guard, good shooter from the perimeter, and a guy like, if we're going to be totally honest, not counting Dennis Smith Jr., who had a cup of coffee in New York, is he our most athletic guard since like J.R. Smith? Not that the competition there is super high, by the way. You're muted, Stacy.
Vertically, yes.
Rose probably was still the most athletic.
Overall athleticism, or if we're counting lateral movement, quick twitch ability, Deuce is pretty fucking athletic.
Who?
I don't think people Deuce McBride. I don't think people
Deuce.
Like it's a different kind of athletic. What?
I thought you said Hughes, and I was like, please don't ever remind me that Larry Hughes played for the Knicks.
Also,
again.
No,
fucking but, Mike D'Antoni's son, who's like, I don't understand why fans are so upset with him. I'm like, because he's fucking awful, and you play him 40 minutes a night? Like, that's why?
Well, I remember he was most famous for being the first guy that Allen Iverson couldn't share the backcourt with, and everyone blamed Iverson. But it's like, nah, Iverson was all right. But the point is, I think athleticism, if you think about it, is more than just like Deuce's lateral agility is probably close to 99th percentile for guards. Combine that with his frame and his strength and like pretty decent hops. Like he has a case. But yeah, I think I guess Shumpert. Shumpert was a pretty good athlete. Did you count him as a guard?
Yeah, I mean, I count Shumpert and J.R. Smith as guards. I still think DiVincenzo is, I don't know. I mean, Shumpert is so weird because he'd have these random moments where he looked explosive, but he never felt like, especially
he wasn't very quick.
Yeah, and after the ACL, I feel like he lost some of that eye-popping athleticism he had at one point. I mean, this is a guy who his rookie season, I remember watching him like mirror fucking Derrick Rose, legitimately, like, which was crazy to watch, and he just didn't have that after that. But yeah, I mean, look, either way, he's at least our most athletic guard in terms of vertical pop since those guys, right? JR and Shumpert specifically. So I think he adds something to the team that we don't have. I really like his ability to grab rebounds and go. Like he's not a great ball handler, but he's a good ball handler in those situations, right? Where you can like get the ball like off the rebound and then just fucking go in open court. He can do that. He's not been a great finisher. I have Prez looking into that to see if there's some stuff that you can fix there, because I do think like for a guy as athletic as he is, he should be a better finisher.
But I mean, to the point of the guy you just mentioned, Dennis Smith, it doesn't always work that way, right? There's other factors involved, and he does have short arms, right? That's an advantage for a guy like Quickly, who's not the most vertical guy, but he's able to use those sneaky angles. DiVincenzo struggles a lot with that. He does have really good touch, though. So maybe, with the Knicks, like, Golden State wasn't a team, I think, that emphasized like no one really shoots floaters on Golden State besides Steph. So I wonder if that's a part of his game that maybe you can unlock. He took 13% of his shots from 3 to 10 feet, but he hit 56% of them. That's really good on floaters. You wonder if you can kind of, especially with, again, how Brunson and Quickly play, the Knicks clearly believe it's an efficient shot. Maybe trading in some of the tougher rim attempts
shot 56% on. He shot 56% on floaters.
From not floaters, from 3 to 10 feet. I would imagine a lot of those are floaters. Their floater stat, I think, is like something I don't have access to. So
yeah, it's on 13. People on Knicks has that.
13% of his shots were between 3 and 10 feet, and he shot 56%. So I think that's interesting because a lot of people talked about he has a very, I don't want to say a Morey ball shot profile, but he gets to the paint or he takes threes. Right, there aren't a whole lot of these.
Yeah, he does nothing else.
Between 10 and it's an extreme actually.
Yeah,
between
10 feet and 3-point line, he had that was 4.5% of his shots. He does not take shots there. But
even for his career, he's like 7% of his shots come from 10 feet to the 3-point line.
So this is not just the Warriors being, analytic Warriors. But yeah, I think the floater is a real thing. Like he took the highest percent of his shots from floater range last year, and he hit 56%. For his career, he's much lower. He's 38%. But it doesn't seem out of, like, he has good touch. And it seems like a shot that if he can trade away some of those rim attempts that are really tough over tough guys for it, and like this is something the Knicks emphasize, that's another maybe hidden area of upside as well.
Yeah, I mean, I just think this, I'm going to pull this up. I know this is your favorite website. Our selectively, our
stats.
Yeah. Our DPM, our select, when we selectively like to use DPM to push our own agendas. Hold on, let me do this. But this is a guy who I think just has some, like, maybe some sneaky upside, like I'm going to pull him up against another guy I've always liked and advocated the Knicks training for, D'Anthony Melton. All right. And give me a second. I have to do the thing where I share my screen with everybody. If I can figure out where to do this. Okay. Let's share this. And here we are. Okay. This is D'Anthony Melton. Look at that. I mean, this is for games played. So DiVincenzo, if you kind of look at it, it makes sense too. He kind of flattened out here, but this is where he had his injury, right? So he comes back from his injury, then he trends up here. If you look at age, him and Melton, kind of similar trajectories, funny enough. And then this is seasons. So, look, I'm not saying the guy is going to be some fucking world beater, but to me, he strikes me as somebody who just maybe has a little bit more upside than meets the eye. And again, like, so he hurts, he fucks up a ligament in his foot at the end of the 2020-2021 regular season, the year that the Bucks won the championship. Doesn't come back until midway through the next season. Clearly isn't right. Gets traded to Sacramento. Literally, I think he played 25 games there, maybe. maybe it was even less, 17. One of those two is either 25 or 17. I don't remember which one is which. But then he goes to Golden State last year and turns it around, right? Like it's a year removed now from his injury. He looks better athletically. I think this is a guy that if I were to guess, I would venture to guess that the front office thinks they're catching him as he's about to take another step in his career. Not saying they're the same player. They're not the same player. They're not even similar necessarily archetypes of players. But I wonder if they think this is like a Derek White type of player where you can catch him in those prime years, get him locked in on a contract, and a year from now you're like, holy shit, this guy's on a fucking great deal. He's locked in for the next 3 years too. This is awesome. And again, like he's literally he's locked into his prime now. He's age 26 to 29. He's going to be under contract with the Knicks potentially. Obviously, he could get traded, but I think this is a good move. And I also one thing I mentioned on the Friday pod, which I find pretty interesting anyway. He is a guy who has played his entire career in the NBA playing on teams that push the tempo. Every single one. Milwaukee, Sacramento, Golden State. All those teams love to push tempo, and he's played on them. I like the idea of him playing off the bench with Quickly and Josh Hart. I think that's and Hartenstein. Like I think that can be a really fun group in a way that's different from how Obi was fun with that group. And to your point about Obi, you thought there was going to be more with him and Hartenstein. Again, I don't really want to. I'm not going to do the whole debate Tibbs thing, but the way Tibbs coaches and how we run our offense, I would guess that a guy like DiVincenzo or perimeter guy like DiVincenzo has a better working chemistry with Hartenstein than a guy like Obi, who really you wanted to get moving, cutting towards the basket, which I think is different. And honestly, wasn't really encouraged in our offense, right? Like Tibbs wants the off-ball guys most of the time to space off the floor and find space behind the three-point line. I think DiVincenzo will be better at that, and obviously he's a better shooter than Obi. So I'm really I like this move, man. I'm not gonna lie. I think he's a fun player. I think the Garden is really gonna like him. I think Knicks fans will really like him, unless you go into this being like, "Fuck this guy! I can't believe this is our big move this summer." But yeah, I mean, I'm not gonna lie. I think he's a good player. I think he's a fun player. Fuck him forever for destroying Michigan in the national championship game. But I mean,
honestly, that kind of he had multiple 30-point games in college despite coming off the bench. I think those kind of things do matter to this front office.
Yeah, and I think he's played in a lot of big games in his career. You know, he's played in playoff games. He's played obviously in championship games in college. He's played well on that stage in college, at least. I don't know. I honestly don't know if he played well in the playoffs with Milwaukee while he was there.
So one thing I did want to ask is, what do you think led to kind of the decline in production? And because we've seen this tweet, 5 points per game in the playoffs, right? Do you think it was just decreased minutes? Frankly, when I watched Golden State, I just didn't notice him as much. Which is in some ways a good thing because I did notice Jordan Poole a lot, not in a good way. But what do you attribute that to? Is there any concern there based on the playoffs weren't were obviously come down from the regular season for him?
I would be lying if I said I watched all of the Golden State playoff run or anything, but I mean, to my knowledge, one of my buddies, he's a Golden State fan, so I asked him about it. I think they needed him to be more than he is. So what he was saying is he's really he's really good as a 7th, 8th, 9th guy in your rotation. But there were too many nights, too many games where Golden State needed him to be their 4th best guy, their 5th best guy. And I think that probably is a lot more doable in the regular season and not so much in the playoffs. So I think
is that a problem then if we give 12% of the cap 10% of the cap, whatever it is?
It's lower than that, way lower than that.
What's the cap? 124 now? 124?
No, it's fucking 156. Okay. I think 152. Let me check. Go ahead.
I mean, is 12 million what they're paying him?
Sorry, it's 136, but then the tax line is 165.
So if you're paying him, so somewhere based on how you want to debate that, right? Somewhere between 7% of the cap and like 9, right? Is that too much to pay for the 7th or 8th guy in your rotation? Some have said that it is. So
no, it's 8.55% of to the cap.
of that
So
136 of that 136.
yeah, it's 8.55%. Spotrac has the percentages listed now of contracts, by the way. I don't think that's too much. I think that's exactly what you want. If you just think about it mathematically, right? Like your 11th to 15th guys are going to be most of the time minimum dudes, rookie scale guys. What percentage of the cap are they? Something from like 3-4% to 0.5% of the cap. Your 7th, 8th, 9th, like your 6, 7, 8, 9 guys theoretically are going to be, somewhere between that 8.5% to, let's call it 15. And then your starters, especially your number 1, 2, 3 guys, like if we just look at this, Julius, right, this year, he is 20.75% of the cap. Brunson, obviously we know this is a value contract, 19.37% of the cap. And RJ Barrett, 17.56% of the cap. Like, I have no problem with this contract at all. I think it's totally fine. And yeah, like we'll talk. I mean, we can talk about the minutes thing right now because I've seen a lot of people complaining about this, and I want to bring up this comment. I know we said we're going to do comments. We haven't gotten that many comments, so it's easy to do. This one is from Hawkeye 420. I keep seeing people say one of RJ IQ, both will be gone now with Donte DiVincenzo. Is there no way a 9-10 man rotation works with the current roster? Is Tibbs' lack of creativity going to force that trade? I don't really understand. I'm with him. Like, I don't really understand this logic. And I want to say, like, if you think, first of all, if the front office views IQ as expendable, not because they want to upgrade at a different position or whatever the hell it is, but purely because they have DiVincenzo now, that's a really big fuck up in terms of player eval, talent eval. Like, Emmanuel Quickley can be a primary ball handler. Not saying he's the best one in the fucking world, but he's obviously very capable of that coming off the bench at least. And he gives you lineup flexibility and he gives you a fail-safe if Brunson is out with an injury, as we saw last year multiple times. If you trade Quickley, I've seen some people talk about, use Quickley with Fournier's contract and whatever, Hartenstein, whatever it is. But, Quickley as the main attractive young player going out in a trade for like Zach LaVine or Paul George or OG Anunoby. And I just don't really understand that because at that point, what you're saying is we're going to have Deuce be our backup point guard or Donte DiVincenzo. And look, I think RJ is going to have a better season next year than he did this past season. I think he builds off of his much better playoff run. But like, I'm not comfortable being like, oh, it's fine. We can trade Quickley because RJ can run the offense. We've seen the offense run through RJ at times now for 2-3 years with those bench groups. And it's not great. It's not great. And that's with Quickley in the mix. I don't think he's capable of just like running your offense like that. I think that's a really big mistake if you do that. And I don't think Donte DiVincenzo can do that. I don't think Deuce. Maybe Deuce can do it, but you can't bet on that. He hasn't shown it yet in the NBA. He hasn't done it. He's like, I'm not knocking him, but he's not shown that he can handle the ball at that level, get into the paint consistently, run an offense, create offense for himself and for others. He hasn't demonstrated that at all. So to me, I don't really get that. And like, even the RJ thing, like, I think it makes sense if you want to say, use RJ to get one of those guys. I don't particularly I wouldn't trade him for LaVine or OG Anunoby, but I understand at least the logic of like, okay, we perceive this wing player to be better than RJ, so therefore use him as the main outgoing piece. But he's not expendable now because you got fucking Donte DiVincenzo. That is irrelevant to whether you would or wouldn't trade him. And honestly, in some ways similar to IQ, like if you think you can get, like, I would disagree with it, right? But if your logic is Paul George is just better, Zach LaVine is just better, those two specifically, and if we acquire them, we won't need a traditional backup point guard because when Brunson's off the floor, one of those guys will be on and we can run the offense through them and that'll be fine. If that's your logic for it, fine, go ahead. But your logic should not be like, we have Donte DiVincenzo now. Let's move IQ. Let's move RJ. That fucking makes no sense. And I don't, and I know I'll give you the chance to respond here in a second, but like the people that are like, how are we going to distribute the minutes? Can you shut the fuck up? Like, it's 9 guys we're talking about in rotation. Guess how many guys were in a rotation last year? 9. And if you're going to be like, well, Obi barely played. Okay, Obi barely played. I agree with that. But like 9 guys in rotation 9 times. But like nine guys in a rotation, like we're not asking Tibbs to manage some like, oh my God, like how can you do this? That's a fucking normal rotation. And guess what's going to happen? We're going to have a stretch in the season where Jalen Brunson misses 5 games, where RJ Barrett misses 6 games, where Donte DiVincenzo misses a couple of games, where Quickly misses a game here or there. Like, you're going to need the depth. You need depth to get through an NBA regular season. And quite frankly, you need good depth to win a fucking championship and to be competitive into late rounds of the playoffs. Like, I remember after the playoffs reading this stuff, like when Boston lost to Miami, I saw Boston fans bitching about their depth, and I'm like, damn, I thought you guys had a pretty fucking deep team, but they're bitching about their depth. Like, depth matters. You need these guys, and quite honestly, you need competition internally as well. It can't just be like, oh, like you don't want guys being complacent. You don't want guys feeling like they're just walking into 25, 26, 27, 28 minutes. No, you want them to earn it. And I think the Knicks have benefited from that type of internal competition. I'm not saying it's acrimonious, but I think these guys fundamentally understand, like, you got to fight for your minutes, especially in those guard and wing spots.
You got to fight for your right to party.
Yeah. No, I mean, honestly, like even Derrick Rose, he had a quote last year during training camp where he was like, they're asking him, I think he was like, he's kind of easing himself back in. They asked him something about like how he's taking it. And he's like, look, like, I'm not going to lie. There are times Tibbs has me like sitting out because he wants to be careful with me. But like, he's like, I can see like these young guys, they want my minutes. Like Deuce McBride isn't just sitting there like happy to not play. These guys want to play. And I think that internal competition is important for us as a team, especially because we don't have, like, if you want to call Brunson a superstar, that's fine. But like, we don't have a fucking MVP caliber guy on the team. So our strength as a team, as a roster, as a whatever, is that depth, is that quality depth. It's that when you go to your 7th, 8th, 9th guys, there's not a huge drop off. And you can make the argument that, given like positional designation aside, isn't Donte DiVincenzo a better player right now than Obi Toppin? I'm not saying the situation like I think if you want to make the argument,
not that much older either, by the way.
Yeah, he's a year older. Yeah, he's a year older. But if you want to make the argument that like Obi Toppin's impact has been suppressed by Tibbs and the environment, I think that's a totally fair argument. I'm not trying to shit on Obi at all on the way out. Like I love the guy. I'm never gonna not root for him. But I'm just saying, like, right now, today, DiVincenzo is a better player.
Yeah, I don't think that's unfair to say at all. I mean, he's a 39% three-point shooter at 26. There's reason to believe that's going to improve. He's 36% for his career, good free throw shooter. As far as spotting up, he can take that over. Obi was not exactly the world's greatest rebounder. DiVincenzo might actually be certainly better for his position. And he moves the ball in a way similar to Obi, and it's a more natural fit. In terms of IQ, so I do agree that I think it's interesting to point out they need depth. There's times when they're going to rest guys because they have that depth, and that'll boost everyone's minutes even more than like some spreadsheet might tell you. But the fact of the matter is this, like, what the difference between IQ and DiVincenzo may be that IQ is a better on-ball guard, and you need him for that role. But, part of what's worked with this IQ thing is that he can do both. He can play next to Brunson and he can back him up. That's how you get him to 25 minutes consistently, right? Now he loses a lot of those minutes because DiVincenzo is going to play some minutes as a backup shooting guard. He's already going to be losing minutes to Grimes. Hart should really not probably be playing the 2 at all this year. There's enough minutes of the 3 and 4 for him to do that, but that's another thing. Plus RJ. So at that point, where are the minutes going to come from when everyone is healthy? And maybe the answer to that is DiVincenzo is signed as a depth piece, and if he's 7-8% of the cap, he can, it's fine to give him only 15 minutes a game. He averaged, I should mention, on a contending team last year, 26 minutes. So that might not be as easy.
But they weren't really a contending team last year. And they had such a fucking weird season, man, with I get what you're saying, but
it's not Josh Hart getting 27 minutes on the Blazers, right?
I think it's maybe
DiVincenzo getting 26 minutes on a team, by the way, whose best player is a guard and who also had another highly paid young guard next to him, right? And he still carved out 26 minutes. Yeah, Poole was shitting himself for large parts of the year, but this is not somebody who doesn't who's gonna struggle like that. So but I also, to your point, I would say if IQ is that much clearly better than DiVincenzo, and I'm not sure he will be at everything, by the way. DiVincenzo might be a more reliable catch and shoot guy than IQ right now.
I think he is.
IQ's a better pull-up shooter, better creator. DiVincenzo's a pretty good passer. IQ's probably can get to more stuff because
I think IQ's better at bending a defense himself. DiVincenzo is very good once the defense is bent and you get him the ball on the move.
Sometimes you just got to bend the D. So, it's very much, and I think they actually could be really good together. But where, if Quickly isn't a contract year, if you're already hearing whispers he wants $100 million, how do you get him to 25 plus minutes? Unless Brunson is going to take a lot of load management days. I think I get what you're saying, and I think Knicks fan, ultimately to me, it's like we signed a good player on a good contract. If we are so scared of our coach that he can't manage it, which I think is probably a little bit overblown, even by us who tend to be skeptical of him on that regard, there's something wrong there. So I'm happy we signed DiVincenzo, but to act like it won't, there isn't some juggling to be done or it won't impact Quickly, and that's not kind of something to monitor, a situation to monitor that the front office, if they really are invested in Quickly being here, needs to be doing that kind of, I'm not going to call it damage control, but working on that, then that also, of course it matters,
I mean, it definitely matters. And I don't think it's just Quickly. I think Grimes probably impacted by it a bit too. Maybe RJ. Josh Hart, like you said, he shouldn't play any minutes of the 2 this year. He should probably just be a 3-4. I think that stuff is all fair. What I'll say is if they pay Quickly, and look, the whispers of he wants to extend. I mean, the rumor was from another team executive, which means absolutely nothing. They have reasons to say that shit for obvious reasons. There are obvious reasons why another team's executive might leak that Emmanuel Quickly should get 9 figures on a 4-year contract, by the way. Maybe he should. I think, my guess is they do value Quickly, even if ultimately they feel like he's probably an outgoing piece in a trade down the line. They also know that
you don't think he's an introverted piece of trade.
But they know that he helps them win basketball games, which again is important to them. They want to win ball games. They're not going to trade Quickly for fucking picks, right? That's never going to be the trade, Quickly for picks. That's not going to happen. If it was going to happen, they obviously shopped around a little bit last year at the start of the season. And, even Katz in his last piece that he wrote, he said, look, they talked about Quickly as a piece potentially going out in a trade for an in-prime star, I think is how he put it. He said those talks didn't advance much further. And he also said the tenor of their conversations have changed drastically from what they were at the start of last season, or when they were kind of maybe exploring Quickly's trade market a little bit. So I don't think they're never going to trade him. But I also think they value him. And, there's a middle ground there. He's going to negotiate too, right? What's he going to say? He's going to leak out there, Emmanuel Quickly doesn't think he deserves more than $15 million a year. No, he's not going to fucking put that out there. Why would you do that? That makes no sense. He's going to put out there, I want 4 years, $100 million at least. That's how you negotiate, right? If it is a leak coming from his camp anyway. To my knowledge, we haven't heard any. I don't think that was a leak from his camp. I don't think we've seen a leak from his camp yet, really. Not this season anyway. or this offseason, whatever you want to call it. I think they'll pay him because I think they value what he does. I think he's going to be a key piece of their team this year. And one day people will appreciate the flexibility that he gives you that not a lot of guys give you. Maybe it'll be the day that he's no longer a Knick. Hopefully that doesn't come, but maybe it'll be that day. But there are not a lot of guards in the NBA that can be effective as the primary and playing next to a primary and doing all kinds of different tasks and roles for the team and being a plus defender at his size. Like he does things that just add value constantly in any role he's in. And I would imagine they value that. And I think that's a reason probably why they value a guy like DiVincenzo, who, yeah, he's smaller. He's 6'4". I think he only has a 6'6" wingspan, but he plays bigger than his size. Just like Josh Hart plays bigger than his size. Just like Quickly plays bigger than his size. I think they appreciate dudes for the impact they have, not their physical measurements entirely. You know, I think that's a reason why they probably like Deuce. I mean, they've said multiple times that
It's not the
Deuce is
size of the boat; it's the motion of the ocean.
correct. So yeah, I think, yeah, I would just say that is what it is. So, um, I think they will keep him. I think they'll extend him, and I also am not concerned about his minutes because if he's as good as I think he is, as you think he is, he's going to earn those minutes, and it'll come at somebody's expense. I don't know whose, but it's going to come. And also, injuries are going to be part of this equation too. Like again, he got to 28.9 minutes per game last season, not because he was like getting that every single night, but because there were injuries on nights. And so when there were injuries, Quickly is the one that stepped up. He was the one that got more minutes. He's the one that started. So I think that's something to consider as well.
Yeah, I mean, again, so they'll have to pay him. I think that's where, if they can extend it this offseason, if he says that, it's been tough to predict, right? You see some guys getting deals, like you see like Bruce Brown getting paid. You see other guys not getting paid. If Quickly feels like I can lock in 4 for 80, and the front office says, however many guards we have, we want to keep this guy, and it'll be a good contract, then yeah. If we go into the season without Quickly being extended, or if they don't come to an extension agreement, I don't see how that's tenable because, one, I don't know that. Well, Brunson might get hurt, so in those games he'll get 30 minutes. That's not good enough for a guy playing for his next contract. It wouldn't be good enough for me if I thought I was capable of really proving my worth in a much bigger way, right? So I think that if they are, if you think an extension is going to happen, you're confident in that. And I think that, and I think it's fair to say that DiVincenzo is not a replacement for Quickly. He can't man the offense. Fine. How hard is it to find a 15 to 20 minute? It wouldn't even be that because they're going to play Brunson a lot. How hard is it to find a 15-minute per game backup point guard that could run the offense? Can they give you everything Quickly can? No, but it'd probably be a lot cheaper. So in that sense, like when people say DiVincenzo gives them some flexibility, I don't think they mean that he's as good as Quickly or is that he's a replacement. But I do think they mean that at least one of the things Quickly gives you, which is a guy who could play next to Brunson and be a connector. He gives you a lot of things. So one of his roles when he plays with Brunson is a connecting secondary creator who can D up, right? DiVincenzo brings a lot of that. So what's the other part of it is an on-ball guy with a lot of upside who can take over when Brunson is out. When your best offensive player is out, he can make sure that you can go into Boston and win. That is a big deal. But just the backup point guard part of that, it's probably, that cost isn't backbreaking. The same way that if you say Obi's really important as a backup forward, you can find ways around that. Probably not as easily as to your point, like Deuce probably you can't rely on to run the offense. But, they do have, it is worth mentioning, they have Rokas Jokubaitis in Europe. Like he has played really well. He's polished. Has he done it in the NBA? No. There are, guys they can, this offseason is not going to make my point because Reggie Jackson and Dennis Schroeder probably got bigger deals than we would like to give for a guy of that caliber. But the point is you can usually find a guy. If that's the only thing you're concerned about, someone running the bench offense, you can find guys like that usually for cheap or for a reasonable price.
I mean, you can. I'm not denying that. But so what are you trading quickly for though? Like I don't understand what the fucking like what is this?
Well, and that's why it usually comes like the idea that Quickly and RJ are both going to be here. I think that's probably why there were so many. Like I hated the fact that weirdly everyone who was pro RJ seemed to hate Quickly and vice versa for the regular season. But part of it now, as you're seeing, is that like I don't think both like one of them is probably maybe it's a Paul George trade, maybe it's a
Right, but if you're trading for Paul George, why would you like just look at it like I this is what I will never
you would trade
understand.
RJ, but you'd say it would
Well,
RJ
if I
is more
want
likely. Yeah.
well, if I want Paul George, let me just think about it logically. Why do I want Paul George? Because I want to
He's
upgrade
a
on the wing.
wing. Yeah. So then you trade your wing, who also allows you to match salary more better, right? More better. Wow.
And also, like, if I trade for Paul George, you're not benching RJ, right? So Grimes moves to the bench, which I think is stupid. But anyway, Grimes moves to the bench, which is understandable if you get Paul George. But then I'm using like RJ as my fourth option now. That makes no sense. He doesn't play like a fourth option. If he's going to be a highly successful, high impact player in the league, I promise you it's not going to be doing what Grimes did this past season. That's
no,
not
well, not all fourth options have to. A fourth option can be in the mold of a guy like Bruce Brown. Maybe it allows you to use him more as a cutter, right? Because you have all of these threats.
Look at our coach, Stacy.
That's a different issue, though, right?
And honestly, I don't.
saying RJ and Paul George.
When has RJ ever in his career, I'm saying going back to college, high school, whatever. When has he ever played it like that? Like this is a guy.
At Duke, he was a pretty good cutter. Like
okay, he was a pretty good cutter. He was also on the ball, fucking 75 times a game.
He was, but he also when he wasn't on the ball, they had another ball dominant player who was a good passer, and like I thought RJ actually played pretty well.
That he can do that, but that's not a fourth option. He wasn't the fourth option. He still got what was his usage at Duke? 30
Probably higher
something?
than Zion's. Yeah,
yeah. It was fucking like he's a high usage player. He's been a high usage player forever. That's what he's.
But he hasn't been efficient in that role. So if you do lower his usage, maybe that's the way to get him to being a more efficient player. Anyway, I don't think the contracts would work out anyway. If you have RJ, Randall, and
I don't think he's going to be good. Like his path to being the player you want, like he's not going to accept being a fourth option in New York. I promise you that. Like he might just be a good soldier for a little bit and go with it, but he's not going to be happy.
Well, I think ideally he's a third option on a good team. I don't think he's the first option on that's
right. His role right now is what you're trying to build him in. Like you're trying to develop him and get him to the point where he's a quality third option. We saw signs of that in the playoffs. We've seen signs of it through his career that he has stretches where he is that guy. Just hasn't put it together for a full season, obviously. But like, if you're all of a sudden being like, be the fourth option. I mean, do you remember when he was like the fourth option for a little bit when we had Kemba and Fournier and Randall? He was not good and he wasn't happy, obviously. I'm not saying he was like crying about it publicly or something, but you could tell it was like obviously not easy for him and he wasn't enjoying it.
You can see all the times when he sets up on the wings and he doesn't get the ball. Like there's a body. Obi showed that. I mean, every player has though. I'm not saying RJ is a bad body language guy by any means. I think quite the opposite. But you can see the very justified frustration, right, when he doesn't get the ball, even when he's playing in that off-ball role, which is less than ideal for him. So.
Right, and so like to me, it's like the entire notion of like, well, we should trade. If you want to trade quickly, fine, so be it. I'm not going to even like. I think anybody on this roster is up to be traded other than Jalen Brunson.
But what about LaVine? Wouldn't IQ make more sense in a trade for LaVine than RJ?
Why? Because
LaVine's going to come in, he's a shooting guard, right?
But LaVine's going to come in and be a 26, 27, 28 usage guy minimum.
The fourth option.
And also, I'll say this. At least with Paul George, if you said we're going to trade IQ out for Paul George, I know for sure Paul George in his career at various points has been able to have the offense run through him, directed an offense for stretches anyway. I'm not saying for like 48 minutes a night, but for stretches and have that be an effective thing that happens. Zach LaVine, go look at his numbers when he's like the guy running the show. It's not good. Like that's not a thing that he's great at. Throughout his career, that's not been a thing he's great at. And so like, if you're getting LaVine and quickly goes out, I mean, shit, at least with Paul George, I know that if he comes in, my defense will be, it might not be as good as it would be, obviously, with Paul George and Grimes next to each other, but Paul George with anybody is going to be an okay defensive pairing. If I put if I put LaVine, if my starting lineup is Brunson, LaVine, RJ, Randall, God help us.
4 subpar defenders. I mean, I do think RJ has more potential, but yeah, like we haven't. at this moment, he's not a plus defender, and that's putting it kindly. So
Yeah, and so I just think. Sorry, my dog is like staring at me. He like wants me to give him attention, but he can handle it for a little bit. But like I don't really understand that, and like I don't want to turn this into like a don't trade quickly at all costs thing, because it's not that. Like I'm just talking like the players that we're talking about. To me, it doesn't make sense to include quickly and trade for those guys. If you were talking about like and even with like I
Dame,
was,
right?
no, I mean not even that, but like at least if you included him in a Paul George trade, I would disagree with that, but I can at least like wrap my head around that one. I can be like, okay, I get it, fine, whatever. But Levine, no, I don't get that. And then like like just trade him for picks, and like people are just so fucking mortified of paying good players. And it's like I think people see the number and they're like, oh my God, how could we pay him that? And it's like, like I literally said, let's say they gave him exactly what RJ Barrett got. 4 years, 107 million. That's 17% of the cap. And it's going to be going down for the rest of the duration of the contract, probably. Like, I don't know what to tell you. Like these are numbers. Don't look at the fucking raw number. Look at the percentages. And this is kind of why, like, I know that and we should talk about the Dame thing because that's hilarious. But like, Dame obviously requested trade, and I saw a bunch of people like, oh my God, I can't believe he requested it now. They committed this money to fucking Jeremy Grant. This is a disaster. It's like, first of all, they probably would want somebody who can like ostensibly shoot, create, whatever. They probably want a wing that is functional and good next to like Scoot and Simons potentially if he's sticking around. Like I don't think that's a big deal. And also like 5 years, 160 million. The length of the contract might be a little concerning, but like I don't think it's going to be hard to move 5 years, 160 million of Jeremy Grant. I think that's like a pretty okay contract to move. There will be teams that are like, yeah, we'll take that. The Clippers will fucking do it. Any team, like there are teams that'll just do it. They'll be like, okay, yeah, that's not a huge contract. We'll take him on. But like, I don't know. I just, to me, the contract stuff, people got to start really looking at percentages. Like, Mitchell Robinson, right? Oh my God, 15 million a year for a center who can't fucking blah blah blah.
12% of the cap. Right?
It's less. It's 11.5% of the cap. This is like nothing. These are nothing. Like these are infinitesimal amounts. Like I just can't get there. And then like, oh, well, we can't pay quickly because we're going to pay Grimes a year from that. Like, so you can deal with these things piecemeal. You don't need to like, well, I have to pay Grimes one day, so I can't pay quickly today. That's just asinine logic. Like, first of all, quickly, if you extended him today, that doesn't hit your cap until a year from now. If Grimes, he's not going to be off his rookie scale contract for 2 years. Why are we crying about this stuff? His contract doesn't kick in until next season. It's fine. Like they're in fine shape. Like if you think this Knicks cap situation is fucked, you're just a fucking buffoon, man. Like relax. And then I've seen people be like, well, you have to pay quickly. Let's use them to get OG Anunoby. What the fuck does that mean? Do you understand that OG Anunoby has to get paid in a year? Like he's also getting paid for your, and I will bet money. I will bet so much money. OG Anunoby will get paid way more than Emmanuel Quickly does. I'm positive about that. Wings
He's
get
gonna make
paid
more than $20 million a year.
If Jeremy Grant got fucking 5 years, 160, I think OG Anunoby is getting more.
Well, OG doesn't offer you as much as a creator or as a shooter.
He's a way better defender on another fucking planet defensively to Jeremy Grant. Like that, it's not even a question. And I don't love, this. I don't fucking love OG, but there's no question who's a better player to me.
Yeah, I mean, Jeremy Grant can shoot and play the 4-5. Like there is some, like even if he's not an overall better defender than OG, there is a lot of value in that kind of versatility. That's, I guess, my counter to that. But I could see OG getting a contract in that neighborhood.
To what? To Jeremy Grant?
Yeah, I could see that.
I'd be shocked if he doesn't, to be honest. The way the league is going and, just how many, he's going to be 26 or 27 when he hits the open market. A wing, his size. If he just plays 60 games this year, he's going to get a fucking big bag. He's going to get paid. Somebody's going to pay him. It's just inevitable. Wings get paid. I mean, honestly, I was even looking at this the other day because I've been looking at this Levine contract, right? As a guy that maybe the Knicks, I mean, we know the Knicks at least kick the tires on it. even his contract at those cap hits, it's like 27, 28% of the cap. It's not like, and it comes down each year. I think by the final year, it's like 26% of the cap or something like that. So some of these contracts, they're just not what you think they are on the surface because we're still like conditioned to view it through the lens of a lower cap. But yeah, I look, going back to just quickly and DiVincenzo, I don't think this is a roster crunch. I'll put it that way. Like, and we haven't even talked about this part of it. I think Popper had this today too. Katz was the first one to say it. I think even Begley might have mentioned it. Is Tibbs is comfortable, or he likes, the RJ and Hart potentially, like he's okay with that as the backup four situation. And like there are people like, well, how can we do that? You're talking about 13 minutes a night. We can't play one of those guys or both those guys or split up the backup 4 minutes between those two for 13 minutes a night, really, in the fucking NBA in 2023. Like, look at the Heat. So 1 second. I just keep talking. I have to mute myself for a second.
Didn't they played Haywood Highsmith for at the 4, right? You can play, like, Hart is kind of the guy that you can do that with. That's a lot of his value. And it's worth noting that, like, DiVincenzo's not going to play the 4, but if you do have good guard rebounders, and if for whatever reason it makes it easier to not have an elite rebounder at the 4. That's without even talking about the fact that Obi wasn't really an elite rebounder. So I think that with Hart, it's not that difficult to see that. It's probably something we wanted more of last year. And same thing with RJ, although RJ leaves a bit to be desired as a rebounder. We'll see if that improves. I do think one thing that the Hart, like, if you play Hart at the 4, it even makes it less likely that you would put, that you would play Randall at the 5. So if they could find a guy like that, I'm going to throw a name out, for example, and I'm curious to your thoughts on him. Do you think they would go after a guy like Trendon Watford? A guy with some upside, probably won't cost much. If he can't play, it's not going to cost you a lot of bad ill will because you don't give him a big contract. But if he can stick and maybe play some 4 as a backup, maybe even some 5 next to Randall, is that the kind of guy that maybe intrigues you? If they decide that, yeah, we like Hart and RJ, but we'd also like to make one of these bets. I don't know if you've watched a ton of Trendon Watford, but
I like the idea of Trendon Watford. I think I would sign him. He's athletic. He's a big body. He's 6'9". Does he? I think he has a 7-foot wingspan. I'm not totally
7'2",
sure.
yeah.
7'2",
not a shot blocker, but he's been the thing is, like, actually, if you remember, he actually
killed the Knicks
played. What?
Didn't he kill the Knicks in that summer league championship game?
He killed the Knicks in the summer league. He also played against that Franz Michigan team, and Franz killed him. But that LSU team played zero defense, and it's funny the way, like, Watford was like a good passer who could shoot a little bit, and like in the pros, he's turned into more of this guy who can, like, play the 4 and the 5, defends well. He's actually been one of Portland's good finds. He's a really good passer, doesn't turn the ball over. The shooting is a little bit of a question mark, but he'll step out and take them. So I think he's like a nice little. And like if the shooting is more real than you expected, that's a good find. A guy who can play the 4-5 and hold up on defense, allow you maybe to play Randall, in a 5-out system. Yeah, and he probably won't go for more than like $4 or $5 mil over 2 years, right? So,
yeah, I would. He's a guy I would definitely like for the Knicks to kick the tires on.
Nekias actually had a list of like a lot of, like, a couple of them were 4s, like Mamu. I can't say Mamu
Kelashvili.
Mamu Kelashvili. He's on that list. There's a lot of intriguing 4-5 guys that maybe that way you could have Hart and RJ as your plan A, but guys who can fit that mold and also have a little bit of upside and will be cheap. I would like to see the Knicks add a guy like that, just to cover your bases and to make sure you have some size on the roster. Right? So,
yeah, I think they do. Like, I'm fine with them not signing a 4 that like should automatically be in the rotation type of thing. I'm fine with that because I think they should, like, if Tibbs can't make those choices himself to experiment with small ball lineups, unless injuries force his hand, then maybe this is what you have to do, right? But they still do need to get some size on the roster. I think Trendon Watford would be a very interesting pickup. Um, I, I think that there are a few guys. I mean, I know Jermichael Green's out there. If you want to just have like somebody who you can throw out there every now and then, sure. But he looked pretty cooked to me last year on the Warriors. Um, but yeah, you're right. There are options out there that they should explore. I know Jalen McDaniel signed with the Raptors for what was it? I think 2 years, 9 million or something like that.
Yeah.
And it's important to note the Knicks do have room now for the biannual exception if they want to use it. I don't know if they do. I wonder if they want to save that for next year. But um, I'm in on Trent Watford. I like that idea a lot. I'm fucking surprised Portland waived him.
Yeah.
Like I was very, very surprised by that. So
Maybe Dame doesn't like him.
yeah,
Wait, now come back. There's also like so I thought I saw an article that the Knicks don't have access to biannual unless they trade Fournier. Is that wrong or?
it could be right. I mean, that might be that the biannual exception. I mean, I can check right now. It might be if they use the biannual exception that puts them over the tax line. Yeah, the biannual exception could get them. Yeah, it would put them over the tax line.
Right. So
like,
they can do it, but they would have to pay tax. Okay, I see.
Yeah, or I mean, they could use a part of the biannual exception if they wanted. Also, that's a possibility. They also are hard cap now at 172 million because of the mid-level exception. So they have about just under 11 million in terms of breathing space to that hard cap.
So on that note, what do you think happens? Like, there was an article that was put out today. I forget if it was Begley or if it was Bondi, but the Knicks, they're looking to trade Fournier, as salary in like a trade, but they also don't want to make him sit on the bench again, which is understandable. He was a good soldier. Reward him for that. Do you see what do you think happens with Fournier?
I could see them trading him for like a similar expiring contract, maybe, or a smaller, like one trade that's out there. Doug McDermott, he's on the Spurs. Maybe you trade Fournier, attach a second round pick because they're taking on more salary. Fournier and a second round pick for Doug McDermott. Maybe that's a trade you make. Doug McDermott makes about 13 and a half, I think, a year.
And then part of the value for the Spurs would be Fournier as a mentor.
Yeah, he's French.
I think that's a little overblown. Wembanyama speaks fluent English.
But they can do like French stuff together. And be French and do all the eat baguettes and whatever. Nemo can tell us if he's still
French
there.
fries.
Yes. But I mean, I think you can do something like that. I am, and the other thing too is expiring contracts have value now, especially with teams that are like probably going to need to get under various aprons, cut their tax bill, whatever. I don't know. Like I get that they want to do right by Fournier and get him somewhere he can play because he was a good soldier last year, took the benching well. But I mean, at the end of the day, they have to be able to use him in a trade that makes sense. They can't just fucking trade him to trade him. They can't just be like, oh my God, we don't want to hurt Fournier so much, so we're going to fucking trade him for bullshit. Like, no, that doesn't make any sense either. The trade has to make sense. So I don't know. I mean, honestly, before they use the mid-level, because, look, this DiVincenzo thing, I expected that to be like a fucking 603 signing. I did not expect it to last this long. So as it went on, I was like, are they listening to my harebrained idea of like attach 3 protected picks and trade him for Keldon Johnson or something? Like, is that going to be the move? But to your point, like having to play 9 guys that need to play it's a little bit tight, but like a coach should be able to manage that. If you traded Fournier now for a guy who like needs to play, that's a big problem. Like, I don't think they can do that now. So, yeah, I don't know. I think it'll be tough, but the McDermott one for me is like, I like that idea for a lot of reasons. One, I think McDermott's a fun player. 2, he is a fucking sniper still to this day. And 3, like he's not important to the Spurs, right? It's not like the Spurs like, oh my God, we need fucking Doug McDermott here. No, I think there's something maybe there to be said with that trade. But We'll see what they do. And McDermott's also like he'll probably be okay with not playing. He'll be fine with the situational designation.
Yeah, I mean, he's averaged 20 minutes per game per his career. Doesn't usually play 81, 82 games. He's a pretty solid scorer. He's career 41% shooter. It never felt like he was that great of a shooter on the Knicks. But the numbers are pretty much in his favor. And yeah, if you're gonna have a depth piece, you'd want it to be someone who can knock down a couple of threes and like hold up on defense. Like that's the kind of guy. I don't know beyond the French thing if there's a whole, but like they might say, and Fournier is probably a better fit in a Popovich type system, right? Because his ability to play in a free flowing offense, drive, kick, make quick decisions, move the ball, throw an entry, like he's a pretty good entry passer, and the Knicks had no one that could take advantage of it.
Well, be French.
I think if my memory serves me correctly, the Spurs drafted a center, so someone who could throw a good entry pass should help. I'd be on board with that. So.
Oh, did they take Noah Clowney?
No, they took Derek Lively. So we should probably get to some of these comments, though. Right here, I don't know if there was.
Yeah, we can get to some. We do have to we have to talk about Dame because I think the Dame thing is hilarious. So here we go. I think this is a fair one. Kind of wonder if Turner will grab enough defensive rebounds to allow Obi to leak out. Defensive rebound is just going to be a problem for that team. They're going to get destroyed in the glass every single night.
Do you think Turner's that bad of a defensive rebounder? Like,
I don't think he's not, but Obi's not a great defensive rebounder, and then the rest of that team is kind of small, right? Like Mathurin, fucking.
They have 6'5", guys.
I do like the Bruce Brown pickup for them, and I did when the contract first came out, I was like, holy shit! But the fact that it's basically $22.5 million for this year, and then a team option on the second year, I think that makes it a lot better. I think it's a good contract now, actually. I agree with this. Guys playing 25 minutes per game instead of 28 doesn't make that big of a difference.
Yeah, but so let me clear that up. What I'm saying is it's tough to get him to even 25. It's tough to get him to C20 right now. Like 20 minutes with this rotation, unless you're just giving DiVincenzo 15 or unless you're capping Grimes at 24, it's just tough to get him to 25 will be tough.
But I think he's going to get to 25 just because guys will miss games. That's what happened last year. I don't know what he averaged in games where we had a full rotation, but he didn't average 28.9 minutes per game last year because that was his actual That's
and then when Brunson was out, he's playing 48, 55 minutes.
Yeah.
Right?
Yeah.
So I don't know if that's good enough for him, but
no. And honestly, that'll probably happen again this year. Because let's be realistic. Unless Deuce makes a serious improvement as far as
creation,
what he can do with his handle, his wiggle. Does he know who he is at the elbow? Can he figure that out this year? But unless that happens, if Brunson misses time, it's gonna be fucking all right. Quick, you got 48 minutes in you tonight. Go for it. I think this is a good point too. From Dirty Dancer again, our defense was really good in the playoffs. Whatever their measurements were on the wing, I agree. And actually, I'll say this. I know that I think our offensive rating this year was 3rd, and then our defensive rating was 19th. I don't care what anybody tells me. Tibbs is not some awesome offensive coach, some super creative guy, but I think that gets exposed in the playoffs. Right? This is a theme with his teams. But if you want to, give him credit and really make an argument in his favor, I think it's worth noting that our defense, both times we've been in the playoffs, has held up. It actually this year made a drastic improvement from what it was in the regular season. So I think he does deserve credit for that. Also, if I'm going to
kill
him
good against Miami too. Jimmy didn't kill us, and as much as we fretted over Strus and those guys hitting threes, yeah, again, Miami's offense did well against us, but it wasn't compared to the other. They played some other good teams, and I think
we had the best success against them in the playoffs defensively.
More than Denver.
I'm not sure. It's one of the other, obviously, but it was pretty close.
And Boston is an elite defensive team, by the way, so that's no small accomplishment.
Yeah. And also, I know there are people, I've talked about this with Jeff, too, where oh, well, Miami shot poorly, we got lucky kind of thing. And, yeah, but at some point, we were out in 3 seasons now of, teams magically shoot worse from 3 against the Knicks. They've got to be, there's something there. I'm sorry. You don't just get lucky 3 years in a row for however 240 fucking games, whatever the hell it is. This one is from EJ1. Is our end game really trading the farm for Embiid? Seems like such a Knicksy move to give up everything for a big over 30. He will just get hurt all the time in New York. Look, I've mentioned this before. the Knicks made an offer for Embiid after the playoffs this year, whenever the Sixers exited. I know like they did make an offer for him. I don't think it was a very serious offer. It was kind of an offer where it's like if they took it, the Knicks would be like, wow, that's fucking great. Did not expect that. But I think they wanted to, just register their interest. And they were told, from, again, my understanding, more or less, Embiid is not, he's not getting traded this summer. We're not trading Embiid this summer. Sure. But I do think, like, yeah, obviously he's a target of interest. And look, I'm with you. I'm concerned about Embiid's health, but I think this needs to be said. I'm people can criticize me for this fairly. At some point, you're going to have to take a risk on somebody, and it's not going to be like the perfect. Like, you're not going to get prime LeBron James or peak Michael Jordan. Like, these are players that are not going to come on the market. If you want to say Giannis, wait for Giannis, fine. But guess what? Everybody's waiting for Giannis. It's not just you. And I know technically maybe everybody's waiting for Embiid, but obviously we know he has a relationship with Leon Rose.
Would you rather trade for Embiid than a guy like Donovan Mitchell?
I think Mitchell's price will be lower. And honestly, I think there's a chance Mitchell is out of there by next summer. I liked the Strus pickup. A little bit questionable about the Niang pickup, not because I don't like him as just kind of like a 4 that can shoot, but that number seemed pretty high for him. I like Strus there, though. That's a good pickup for them. Though, maybe there's some Spoelstra attacks that we'll see. We'll have
he's a shooter who, I think that's the thing. Like, is he someone you can pick on defense? Would the Knicks be able to pick on him on defense with Brunson more than they were able to probably in that Miami series? I don't know. What I'll say is this: with those kind of shooters, that makes a lot of what the Knicks did on defense less tenable, right? So
they did defend Strus well. Needs to be said.
Yeah, but I'm saying if you have Strus in Cleveland and Mitchell drives, it's tough to help off as aggressively as the Knicks did off even LeVert, right? I think Strus is a better shooter than LeVert. So,
oh yeah, I mean Strus is like, it doesn't matter the percentage. You're just scared of him in a way that you're not scared of fucking LeVert, and you can run actions with Strus that you can't run with like LeVert. Like he can sprint off pin downs, like straight up sprint off pin downs and get that shot up. He's a really good shooter. So that was a good pickup for them. But yeah, look, I'm with you. I think there's a lot of reasons to be worried about Embiid, but this is just where I think the Knicks need to operate, and this is where I think I'm confident anyway, or I suspect that their front office is thinking like this: is every guy that you're talking about, any big move, star move, whatever, the lens of that should be, do we think this guy makes us a championship contender? I don't know what the hell to say about that with Embiid, because I don't even know what an Embiid trade would look like right now, right? But if you think that move, whatever it is, gives you a chance at winning a championship, then you should at least be open to the idea. Now, the fact that Joel Embiid has never made it past the second round is very concerning to me. And Stacy, I know we've kind of argued about this before, and I do hear you when you're like, is it like Joel Embiid can't get past the second round, or is it the Sixers can't get past the second round, and is that all on Joel Embiid? For sure, I think there's some reasoning there, but like at some point, if you're that guy, you just got to show it. I'm not asking him to win a championship. Just get me to a conference finals, buddy.
Well, our good friend Tyrese would remind us that I think the big issue with Embiid would probably be the turnovers and double teams, inability to handle. He's not Julius Randle when it comes to that, but I would say that, and that does cap you if you're a team that. Any team is going to be built around Embiid, right?
Yeah.
So that is the worry there.
Yeah, and I think this is a good point. This is kind of like where I think the Knicks are operating. This is all again from Dirty Dancer. Getting a top 5 player like Embiid or Giannis during Brunson's prime, which is right now, should be the goal, 30 or not. I think that's, and I think we can also say 30 in the league today in 2023 is different than 30 was in 2015. Can't iHeart just play the 4 at the free throw or 3-point line and then play Sims more at the center spot? I hope not. We saw the stretch 5 iHeart thing kind of fizzle out. I don't know how much of a shooter he really is. I think he's more willing to take threes than he is willing to make threes. But no, I mean, look, I think there are very specific defensive situations where that's actually, I think the defense with that group is fine. It's not about their defense is actually really fucking good. Because Sims is he's athletic enough to guard a lot of fours, and he can get out on the perimeter and switch and all that stuff. And Ihart's obviously a really good rim protector. But the offense is just fucking rough, man. It is really, really hard. Yeah, I think we got a couple more. Fournier to the Rockets for someone or picks. I don't know if they're the contracts anymore that make any sense to do this. The Rockets are hilarious. Here we go. This one is from Chris Bernhard. What truly cost the Knicks was lack of defensive rebound and miscommunication on the wings. I agree. The defensive rebounding killed them in certain games. I think especially game 4, man, that was brutal. Even game 6, they had some bad.
I think they were just gassed at that point, though. Game 4, they were very shorthanded, right? So
yeah, quickly was out for that. Quickly was out at that point. I think Randall was up, but he played the playoffs hurt, and then RJ had a bad rebounding series. Needs to be said. Like, that's actually the one thing. Like, we talk about the passing and decision making with him a lot. His defensive rebounding, and I know the numbers look fine. That's one thing he just needs to like be more focused on, just boxing out. And honestly,
it does seem like young player stuff that I don't think it's effort based, but yeah, I think the technique.
And even going back to Duke, what was do you remember the tournament game where they nearly blew it because he didn't box out?
Yeah, Aubrey Dawkins.
Yeah,
former Wolverine.
Yeah,
that was a great. By the way, if you go back, that was one of my favorite tackle fall against Zion Williamson. That was a fun game. But
this is from Karimimino. New York, shut the fuck up. Y'all so fake. Y'all definitely don't represent the majority of Knick fans' opinion. I don't know what we just said that warranted this, actually, but
I always assumed that every Knicks fan had the same opinion as me. So I'm going to reflect on this. Thank you for watching, and thanks for letting me know. Yeah.
And actually, you know what? Why don't you shut the fuck up? You're fake. Fuck you. All right. This one is from Pharaoh, our fearless leader, Julius. Yes, our fearless leader, Julius.
What up, Pharaoh?
I look, the Julius thing is so interesting because after that playoff run, I was just like, fuck this guy. Have had a little bit more time to think about it, and I probably was harsh on him. But like, I'm still very much of like, to me, he's a guy I still don't trust him, especially in these big games, big moment stuff. He probably deserves a little bit more credit than I gave him, a little bit more leeway than I gave him in terms of dealing with his injury in the playoffs. But again, like, some of the effort stuff was just so crazy to watch. It's tough, but yeah, I mean, look, Julius is going to be here in all likelihood. And honestly, I think Begley might have said this today. I think this is going to be more or less the roster to start the year.
So you don't see them making a Paul George or James Harden trade? I think James Harden seems very unlikely.
I hope to fucking God they don't make a James Harden trade.
But so to be clear, if there was RJ and picks, would you do that for Paul George? Or like, I know Jeremy had. I watched the whole pod, but the whole Jeremy mad scientist thing.
Yeah, I haven't seen it. I know, like, and for people that haven't seen it or heard it, Jeremy basically did the math. If the Knicks
Jeremy Cohen, sorry,
yeah,
to be specific.
No, we don't need to. People know who Jeremy is. He's a big celebrity in New York. Not too many gingers like Jeremy. If you do the trade, I think it's basically like if you do RJ and Fournier as the salaries for Paul George, the Knicks salary cap, they end up $100,000 below the luxury tax line, so they still wouldn't be in the tax. So, look, I've talked about this before. I would do RJ and Fournier and like a pick and protected pick or two, probably. I don't even know. Like, it's really hard to understand right now what the value of things is. Like, with this new CBA, it's the trade value stuff is really hard to figure out right now. So I'm just not sure how to price a guy like Paul George. Like, I think there's really an argument where you would be like, the Knicks are the one doing the Clippers a favor here. So there shouldn't even be picks involved, because do they want to pay Paul George's next contract? I think that's something worth considering. But yeah, like, I think if the major outgoing players are RJ Barrett and Evan Fournier for Paul George, there is a price point I think that I think I would do that. I would do that because I think Paul George, if right, and I understand the injury risk is significant. So if people that like are not comfortable with that, say that like that's the reason you say no, that's fine. I totally understand that. I don't think it's unreasonable at all. But I would do that because I think if he's right, there's real championship upside with this group.
So can he be the best player on a championship team? Because I think throughout his career, he seems to almost be the best possible player you can be with just something missing, right? He's a great defender. He's not even a bad passer, but it just seems like him being the guy has always had a little bit left to be desired.
I think he can be the best player, but he can't be the best offensive player.
And you don't think he would be on the Knicks, which is
no,
high
I think,
praise, by the way.
I think Brunson is the better offensive player, just a better shot creator, more trustworthy in key moments of like late games and stuff like that. And it's honestly insane how good of a 3-level scorer Brunson is at his size. Like it's fucking ridiculous how good he is. Especially like, this is one thing I think that probably holds back quickly in terms of his explosiveness as a scorer in tight game situations at times. Is his mid-range release point on his shot it's low, right? So it's harder to get that off in mid-range. Brunson's release is so like it's just crazy how good he is in the mid-range. But yeah, I agree with Farrow here. After seeing the Sabonis contract, I love Julius. He also says ready to run it back. Look, I think the Knicks should obviously, and they will be, they should still be open and willing and aware of different opportunities available to them in the trade market. Like if there's something that pops up, you got to take a shot. But yeah, I mean, I'm okay with this because I don't think this is running it back. I think as things stand, this is we're running back 8 of the 9 guys in the rotation, but we are putting Tibbs in a position where he's going to have to do more than just play like traditional 1, 2, 3, true 4, true 5, like that. We're going to have different combinations. I think that's really important. I think that's significant. This is from Chris Bernhard, not Knicks related, but good for LaMelo on getting the bag. So the next team he goes to doesn't have to pay him.
Maybe that is Knicks related.
Yeah, maybe. But look, I've said this about LaMelo. I think he's an incredible talent. I just have no idea what to like. I don't know what he is right now. He had such a weird season last year, obviously with the injuries. He's super talented, but then you watch him sometimes in these tight games, and especially both the playing games they've been in have been a fucking disaster, which isn't entirely on him, obviously, but like not a great look. So I don't know. I understand it why Charlotte did it. I think they kind of had to, but if I were them, I would have just taken Scoot, and then I would have been at least kicking the tires on what is LaMelo worth? What is he worth? And tried to push back my timeline a little bit. Give me Scoot and Mark Williams, baby. It's the next Kobe and Shaq.
You mean wait? Isn't Mark Williams the Hornets?
Yeah, but I'm saying Scoot. I would have taken Scoot.
Oh yeah, I get you.
Do you like Brandon Miller, by the way?
He's better at assisting shooters than shooting. No, he's sorry. Look, he's 6'9". He can score at 3 levels. The rim stuff was a bit of a question early. He's a big time shooter. He's got handle. How much he could impact winning overall? Well, he played on a winning team. Like the defense, you'd probably like to see more impact than he showed, being given his physical tools. But like, you can't really go wrong drafting guys like that. And it's not a situation where it's like Cam Reddish, where it's like, oh, in theory, this guy looks like Brandon Miller was really efficient as a shooter from multiple levels, getting his own shot. And so it's actualized, like he's going to score. The question is, how much more can he do around that? And can he do it consistently at the rim? I would have taken Scoot because I think he's a generational prospect or close to it. But, taking a 6'9" guy who shoots 40% from 3 and can create his own shot, you can do worse than that. So,
by the way, this is from Prez. Just mentioned this in the Discord. Biggest play type for Donte DiVincenzo was a spot up, 32.5% of his shots. Hit that in the 95th percentile. 1.3 points per possession on spot ups, 1.2 points per possession off screens. That's definitely something that the Knicks could use. So, yeah, that's definitely interesting. Also from Prez, DiVincenzo only took 12 runners floaters last year. So I guess what the hell is he doing in the 3 to 10 feet? He's just pulling up for like really short jumpers.
he takes a lot of shots from 3 to 10 feet. So, but yeah, I don't know. Yeah, it's interesting. Maybe it's like
Maybe he's dunking from 10 feet. I don't know.
But yeah, I think the Dame situation is pretty interesting, and I this is what I was wondering too, is like, were the Knicks holding off on a DiVincenzo mid-level signing because they were maybe potentially trying to get in as a third team in one of these Harden deals, Dame deals, whatever. Obviously, that's kind of, I don't want to say put to rest because there's always a possibility for something, but yeah, look, I just think this Dame one. I hope that Evan Siddery, I think he aggregated this for about Woj, but Woj said that Joe Cronin isn't just going to honor his request to be Miami or nothing else. He's going to try and get the best deal out there. And quite honestly, like, I think that's the right thing to do. Dame, as much as he's been loyal and hasn't run from the grind, Dame has also cashed in on that loyalty, right? Like, he wanted to stay to the point where he got that 2-year, $122 million extension that they added to his contract. Like, they also, I mean, I know I said like Jeremy Grant, I don't really mind that signing either way, but like conceivably they did sign Jeremy Grant because Donovan Mitchell would not officially request a trade. And I get it. Like, yes, they should, Portland's front office probably should, and I'm sure they were aware that like they might request a trade, but until he does, you can't know that. So you have to operate how you operate. Do I think they're low-key happy that they requested a trade? You could convince me they're not unhappy about it.
Yeah, they
but
do have Scoot now, right? So
yeah, I mean, I love Scoot. I think, I don't know how him and Simons are going to work. I don't think they will work long term, but for like a year, 2 years or whatever for right now, I think that's fine, right? Just
I actually like Simons better as like being focused on being a scorer than like, because Scoot is a really good facilitator, and Simons like I think we too often divide it into off ball and on ball, where there are guys like a Levine, like what you said about Levine, right? When you run the offense through him, his limitations show up. But if he can still have the ball in his hands a lot, but isn't tasked with setting everything up and can focus on scoring, I think that's still where I like Simons the best. And
Yeah,
so that's why I think I could, and I think in that sense, Scoot is really good for him.
Yeah, I mean, I just think Simons is like an interesting player. Like, I'm surprised no team has. I mean, and maybe that's because teams are waiting to see how the Dame situation shook out. But like, I'm surprised no team has really aggressively pursued him at all, because I feel like his shooting metrics are fucking crazy, man. He's a phenomenal
young player.
Yeah, he's a phenomenal shooter. So yeah, but I'm with you. Like, I get that. But like, if I'm Portland, I'm like, look, man, I'll try to honor your request as much as I can, but you got to give me more to your list than like Miami or nothing. Get the fuck out of here. Like I'm not just trading Tyler Hero for Tyler Hero and the poo-poo platter of picks they have just because that's where you want to go. I'm not handing you over to Miami because of that. So that's good. And I agree with this. I think this would be actually a good trade.
If I wanted to worry about Florida, I'd move to fucking Miami. Quote Johnny Sack.
Portland should trade him to the Spurs. They would get a haul. I actually don't hate that. And one other team in Sam Amick's article.
Wemby.
Yeah, that would be awesome, man. They're not trading Wemby, but putting him with Wemby, that'd be so fun.
So what would they give up? Sohan and Vassell? You'd have to go with Vassell, right?
Yeah, give up Vassell, Sohan. I mean, they have all those dudes they drafted, right? Branham last year, who actually his floater, by the way, is really nice.
He's a nice mid-range player.
Yeah, I guess you can take the Ohio State out of a guy, but like, I mean, they've got but they've got a few, like they've got a bunch of young dudes they've drafted, right? Keldon would be an interesting guy to send back to Portland. Throw Keldon in the deal. Keldon, Sohan, Keldon.
I would imagine Vassell is the one guy Portland wouldn't. He is San Antonio's, besides obviously Wemby. San Antonio.
Yeah, and I would rather keep Sohan if I'm them than Vassell. Because I think I just like him with Wemby. I think their defense is going to be fucking awesome with those two. But like, I would consider that. You get 4 years a Dame. He's locked up, right? Like, he's not a flight risk anytime soon. Actually, and another team that Sam Amick mentioned in his article today, kind of behind the scenes of the Dame trade request or whatever, he mentioned that Utah had kicked the tires. And I actually thought that was really interesting because Utah has all these picks. They're probably like, if you buy that Markkanen is what he was last year, then they can't really tank. So like cashing in some of those chips for Dame is interesting to me. They were in the play-in mix, right? I mean, they would be pretty good probably next year. I think they'd make the playoffs if they got Dame.
Do you know of any teams that are close to contention with a troubled young point guard who also have a lot of picks?
Sorry, say that again.
Troubled is maybe a strong word. Are there any teams with a superstar young point guard with some issues that were close to contention last year and have a lot of picks?
Yes, I am aware of.
Do you think Dame likes
Picks.
barbecue?
I think everybody likes barbecue.
I'm being tongue in cheek, but maybe not. I don't know. Like would they do that? Like,
But why
Dame,
would
Bane and Jaren
why
Jackson?
why would Memphis want? Why would Portland want Ja?
Well, if you're trading Dame, that's your best chance of getting a talent that's close
Right,
to the level.
but if you're trading Dame, aren't you just like it's because you're trying to
Giving
put
the
ball.
keys to Scoot? No, you're trading Dame
Yeah.
because he wants out.
Yeah,
So
well, that's true. But I mean, your motivation. I mean, you took Scoot because you think he's. And I think Scoot's gonna be awesome. I think he's gonna be really, really good. I think he's super fun. I just like everything I've seen of him and heard of him. Like his mentality seems fucking great. Like he seems like one of these guys that's just gonna play fucking hard all the time. And he looks like he literally has been in the gym since he's 4 years old or something. So I don't know. Like I'm pretty on Scoot. I mean, if you could get Ja, maybe flip him to another team or something like that, that'd be something to consider. But yeah, I mean, to bring it back to the Knicks, if the Knicks don't get a start in the next 2 years, Spido will be available. I think I'm almost positive he's going to be available. He's not extending in Cleveland. I'd be shocked if he extended in Cleveland.
Well, he might get traded to somewhere like, well, maybe not Miami, but
I mean, and all
a place where he's fine extending, right?
This is where this falls on Mitchell, though, right? Because part of the reason why I think he didn't get traded to New York ultimately last year is because he would not put his foot down. Like, say what you want about Dame taking forever to make the trade request. At least, like, and I understand Mitchell didn't technically request a trade last year, but once they were shopping him like all summer, don't you think he could have been like, look, New York's my preferred destination. I'm not going to extend anywhere else. Even if you totally would potentially extend somewhere else, if you want to go somewhere, it behooves you to put that out there. And I think Dame is right to do that. He wants to go to Miami. He should put that out there. Like, I mean, I guess but he can't even threaten, like, I won't extend because you're like, great. We don't want to extend you at age 38 anyway, buddy. Like, we're good. Like that. We'll just take you for the next 4 years and we'll
Yeah,
move
that's
on with
another
that.
consideration, right? Like, yeah, he doesn't really have much leverage here.
Yeah. So I mean,
I guess he could threaten to retire or something.
Yeah.
And we'll give up $200 billion.
Yeah. I guess we can close this. What do you think is what do you think of Harden going to the Clippers? Do you like that big three, Harden, PG, Kawhi?
No, it makes them even more top heavy. I think when if Kawhi Leonard is healthy, you can't count that team out. Would bringing Harden back and giving them facilitator help? Yeah, sure. But their problem isn't that they don't have enough star power. I still believe that. Like that Nuggets win, maybe now the Nuggets have improved. So maybe now they have passed the Clippers. But that series where Kawhi and Paul George were healthy and lost the Nuggets, that to me felt a little bit like that fourth quarter, George was shooting shots off the side of the backboard, which was hilarious to watch after he called himself playoff P. But like, whatever, that doesn't mean that can't work. That was a really bad game. And a poorly, there were a lot of things. Like it was, one of Doc's worst coach series. So do I think it can work? Yeah. Do I like it? I mean, I think they're not going to have depth, but maybe they don't really have too many other options. It's kind of between that and burn it down. But the biggest issue is this thing has been availability. You have, when healthy, maybe one of the 2 or 3 best players in the world. His health is just not reliable anymore. Paul George is, when healthy, another top 10 player. Does Harden solve that? His availability hasn't always been great. If you send a strip club connoisseur to LA, is he going to show up to camp in shape? I think that's a valid concern right now, right? So if they manage that, you add a great passer to two elite isolation scorers, it can really work extremely well. But that's another thing, right? Like, I don't know what the Clippers are thinking right now, because on one hand, you have people saying, would they trade Paul George? On the other hand, this is the other extreme. Like, would they push their chips? I mean, they're not trading Paul George if they get Harden.
Here's a theory. There are two theories. One theory, Ballmer doesn't like his ROI on this team, does not have any interest in trying to max these guys again, and told them to, hey, look, I think we can sell Kawhi by himself to move into the new stadium. Let's just see what's out there for Paul George. Test the market, see what's out there. That's one theory. Second theory is the front office wants to pivot off of this path, and Ballmer is in his let's call it the early Dolan phase of no, but just get one more guy. Just get one more star. Trade everything for one more star.
From Ballmer's past, the Zune can work. We can compete with the iPhone.
But yeah, I mean, I think there's something to like Harden. Look, you're going to a new stadium, the star power of Harden. And look, they also re-signed Russell Westbrook, by the way. I kind of want.
He actually was decent there, yeah.
I think I want Harden to go there now. Like I want to see
Russ, Harden, George. The Bizarro Oklahoma City Thunder.
Yeah, just bring back Nenad Kristic to play the five.
What's Serge Ibaka doing?
I don't know. I kind of just I think I need to see this team.
And then you get the Players Tribune article, my next chapter from.
I did like that pickup they made, KJ Martin. I thought that was a good pickup.
Yeah, I kind of wanted the Knicks go after him. Friend of the pod, Larry Israel, has been on the KJ Martin hype for a while. I get why. Larry
has some interesting agendas. He's had KJ Martin and Andrew Nemhard was another victory for him.
Yeah, that was he was early on that. I get credit for
that. Yeah, I mean, I'm. I think it's fair. We can kind of wrap up with this, but I think it's fair if you are annoyed at, like, at some point they do need to make a big trade. They do need to make they need to take a big swing, and I get the frustration of like not doing that. And I'm of the opinion that like I am worried a little bit about running it back. I think at least moving Obi was a smart, preemptive. And I mean, look, I don't want to give them too much credit here for like trading Obi for 2 seconds, but it was a necessary move. I don't think you wanted to bring him back to a situation where I mean, how depressing is that? He knows after 3 years, he knows if he comes back, I'm going to play 15 minutes a night. That's it. Nothing else is going to happen. I don't think you want to put him in that situation. Obviously, we got the reports that him and Tibbs got into an argument after Game 4 where he didn't play in the second half at all. So, like, I'm happy they did that. But if you wanted more wholesale changes and you think they needed to make a big swing, I totally get the frustration there. Just don't know if that move is out there this summer. Like, I really don't. They obviously kicked the tires on LaVine, but how much do you want to give up for LaVine? And is LaVine, like, to me, LaVine is a risk. Like, he's a good player as much as I've clowned him in the past. He's a good player. But if I trade LaVine for RJ, right? Or RJ for LaVine, rather, the Knicks were the third best offense in the league last year. They were the 19th best defense in the league. Is LaVine moving the needle on offense so much?
Well, I mean, you said yourself, right? That's not the only consideration. It's also if you are in a playoff series, and you're struggling to score and shoot against a team like Miami, does he help you help you win that series, even if in the regular season your metrics don't match up?
Yeah, and I still totally believe that, but he's played 4 playoff games. Like, is he? We don't know what he is. I'm not saying he is a playoff choker or something like that. We don't know. It's been 4 games, so it's just, to me, it's like I get the argument for trading for him, but something about it, again, I keep going back to this, like, the numbers all say like you should probably make that move if it's available to you at a certain price. Something about it just makes me feel like, I don't know. It doesn't feel right. I'm not trying to get LaVine. It's just, I can't quantify it. It's just a gut feeling. I wouldn't do it. Not to say he's a bad player, but I mean, I did like their little pickup of Javon Carter. I think that was a smart move for them, actually.
Yeah, no, Javon Carter, I think, is like a really interesting
I just like him.
He's improved as a shooter a lot, but do you know where he went to school?
West Virginia.
Yeah, so he was Deuce before Deuce, like Pitbull point of attack
He's
guy.
a Bob Huggins
Yeah,
disciple.
he's a Bob Huggins, leaving out the transphobic shit from Bob Huggins.
A lot of shit from Bob Huggins.
Yeah, Jesus. But that's that. And he's had to really elevate as a shooter. But that's kind of, I think I think you're seeing now a resurgence where during the analytics phase, a lot of people were like, point of attack defense was probably, in terms of looking at a defender overall, like team defense became more important, right? I think you're seeing that guys who can play the point of attack and not hurt your spacing, because they can disrupt an offense, they can use up precious seconds of the clock, and most of them have the athleticism and the awareness to not just be a one trick. Like Deuce is good off ball too. It's not like he's just only a press coverage guy, if you want to put it like that. So I think that Jevon Carter is good. The shooting matters, but I think especially with so many teams preferring to play their offense, run their offense through big wings, right? Whether it's a guy like Randall or whether it's a guy like Luka or something, those guys are starting to be more in vogue. And that's yet another way in which Quickly has there isn't a place in the league that Quickly can't fit and be impactful in, right? So that's a side note. Obviously, you don't have to be Quickly in every conversation, but I agree with you on Carter, and I think he's a good player.
Yeah, I like him. I don't know. If they're gonna run it back, I guess he's an interesting guy to bring. Their defense with him and Caruso should be really, really strong. So that's a good pickup for them. The Lonzo thing, obviously, if I'm them, I'm done with this.
It sucks too because he was good with them.
Yeah. I mean, and I think again, to bring it back to Levine, the argument in his favor is look, the one time that they had good guard play, that team was first in the East and Levine looked great and they were fucking doing work. And, whether they were going to really win a championship or not, I don't think they would have, but that's the one time in his career he's actually had good guard play around him and they were really good. So, if he got to New York and he got to play with Brunson, maybe that takes you to the next level. We'll see. If it does happen, anyway, we'll see. All right. I think that's a good place to end it. Stacy, let people know where they can find you and plug anything you'd like to plug.
Yeah. If you have not used 600 tweets or 300 if you are not verified, you can find me at Stacy Patton 89. On that note, I'll plug Blue Sky. I'm planning to check it out or somewhere else. And shout out Elon Musk. And other than that, nothing else to plug.
Awesome. I have nothing to plug, but I will plug this because Twitter might be dying. If you like listening to us talk and you want to talk to us about basketball more frequently, join our Discord. It's fun. As I mentioned, there are a number of tiers. I'm not going to go into that whole spiel, but yeah, check that out. That is available to you on Patreon, so you can subscribe to that. Other than that, I'm just going to plug all the work at Strickland, all of the wonderful stuff that we have going on, articles. Jeff wrote a really good article that dropped on the eve of free agency that I'd recommend everybody check out, kind of about the place where the Knicks are as a franchise right now. It's good, but there are tough decisions looming for them moving forward. So definitely recommend reading that. And aside from that, again, just check out the Discord, Patreon, definitely worth it. And yeah, again, that's our show today. It's brought to you again by Bet Online. I hope everybody has a great week, holiday week. Maybe if you have Monday off, good for you. Enjoy the 4th. Be safe. Enjoy all the burgers and beer. I'm sure it'll be a blast. All right, everybody have a good 4th, and I'll see you on Friday.